Chapter 5200. There were too many Fortune Gate disciples on the Dawn Rain mainland, but their strength was too weak. Although Li Xiang and Xiong Yi had urged the Fortune Gate disciples on the other three mainlands to protect the Dawn Rain mainland, they were powerless against the punishment formation that even Xiaohua was at a loss of what to do. Xiaohua glanced at Fairy Hong Xia, Huang Mengxiang and the others. He knew that they were still safe, so he waved his hand and took the Kunlun mirror from Feng Wu. He then flew to the top of the Sky Patrol City. He did not hide his cultivation, and his 1,000-feet-tall avatar stood there like a god. Xiaohua looked around and said, "Everyone, am I Xiaohua? I'm sure you're familiar with my name. You've all seen the situation today. No matter what your purpose is or what you've done, this old man would like to thank everyone for coming to help. Now that we're in a life-and-death situation, we have to work together to defeat the enemy and break this punishment array." Spiritual Master Xiao. Kunlun Sect's Sect Master Xianjing was the first to speak. He shouted, "Our strength is weak, and we can only defend in this formation. It's difficult for us to fight back. We've caused trouble for Spiritual Master. Please tell us, how should we break the formation? My Kunlun Sect will listen to Spiritual Master's orders." It would be a lie to say that Xianjing did not regret it. However, he had already made preparations and arrangements before he came to Sky Sentry City. Even if all the disciples of the Kunlun Sect were killed, the Kunlun Sect would not suffer too much damage. In order to return Xiaohua's favor, Xianjing knew that he had to listen to Xiaohua's orders. "That's right." Spiritual Master Yang Yu immediately said, "We have troubled Spiritual Master before, and now we want to atone for our sins. If there's anything you need us to do, please let us know. We'll do our best." Immediately, many other sect masters also expressed their opinions. Xiaohua saw this and smiled. "Since that's the case, then everyone listen to my orders. Form your battle teams and listen to the orders of my Fortune Gate disciples. Go to the punishment array and break out." The group of sect leaders, including the sword cultivators, did not dare to be negligent. They all bowed and answered, "Woo." At this time, several thousand miles away, the 81 punishment pillars let out a whale-like roar. 81 bamboo slips as big as mountains rolled up from the ground and flew towards the crowd. Each time a bamboo slip was rolled up, the world would become a little bit more transparent. A space filled with inscriptions, bamboo slips, scrolls, ink brushes, mountains of text, and a sea of words would be revealed. Not good. Xiaohua was inwardly alarmed. Knowing that there was a change in the rules of this punishment array, he dared not hesitate any longer. Activating the Kunlun mirror, groups of Fortune Gate's disciples flew out. These disciples all had cultivation of 4th grade and above, and standing in midair, they were not inferior to any sect's patriarch. Xianjing and the others had previously thought that the Fortune Gate's disciples Xiaohua had mentioned were Li Xiang's group, but when they saw such an awe-inspiring Fortune Gate's battle team that could sweep across the Dawn Rain mainland with a wave of their hand, they were dumbstruck. Disciples! Xiaohua had already passed down the order in the space. At this time, he waved his hand in the distance and said, "Listen to my order, protect everyone and break the punishment array." The Fortune Gate's disciples shouted in unison. "Disciples will obey Sect Master's order. This is my big brother Xiao. I knew you would have such a divine ability." Seeing so many nascent Soul Realm disciples respectfully listening to Xiaohua's orders, Huang Mengxiang's face was flushed red with excitement. He clapped his hands loudly and stared fixedly at Xiaohua, not wanting to shift his gaze away for even a second. "Oh my!" Li Zongbao, who had always been concise and comprehensive, couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He looked at Wuxia and said, "Previously I thought I knew junior brother Zhao's strength, but now, it seems like I still underestimated him. I vaguely heard the devil race say that Taoist Xiao is already a supreme expert of the human race." Wuxia's eyes also faintly lit up, and she said with admiration, "I don't know when I can cultivate to such a level." In order to avoid arousing suspicion, Yin didn't go to the Heavenly Demon 3 Sect's location. He carefully looked around, guarding Wuxia, Fairy Hong Xia, and the others. At this time, when he heard Wuxia mention it, he smiled and said, "Why is fellow Taoist envious? With Taoist Xiao here, fellow Taoist will cultivate to the peak sooner or later." Xiang Zhili and the others only listened, and it was rare that they didn't say anything. Their eyes looked around, and there was a trace of excitement on their faces. "That's true." Wuxia retracted her gaze and looked at Fairy Hongxia, who had a strange expression on her face. She used her elbow to nudge her and said with a smile, "Hongxia, I really didn't expect you to have such a good eye. With Taoist Xiao, our Kai family can do whatever we want in the Dawn Rain continent in the future." Fairy Hongxia lightly bit her lips, and her face was also filled with excitement. She looked at Xiao Hua with incomparable passion in her eyes. However, there was a trace of confusion in this passion, as if everything in front of her was a dream. Swoosh! Just when Fairy Hongxia was feeling half awake, everyone's vision blurred. Xiao Hua, who was like a god just a moment ago, turned into a stream of light and landed in front of them. Xiao Hua waved the Kunlun mirror in his hand and said to Fairy Hongxia, "Hongxia, this punishment array is too dangerous. I have to focus on breaking the array, and I'm afraid I can't take care of you. In my hand is the Kunlun mirror, and within it is the Kunlun Immortal realm. If it's possible, you can enter the Kunlun Immortal realm with Wuxia, and it won't be too late for you to come out after I break the array." Unexpectedly, Fairy Hongxia looked at Xiao Hua and didn't reply. Instead, she turned to Li Zongbao and said, "Senior Li, what do you think?" How could Li Zongbao be the type to back down? He raised his hand and waved the immortal slaughtering whip and said proudly, "Junior brother Xiao brought his own disciples out of the Kunlun Immortal realm to break the array. They can fight a bloody battle. How can I be at ease alone? I'm not going to this Kunlun Immortal realm." Fairy Hongxia smiled and looked at Xiao Hua and said proudly, "Since Senior Li isn't going, then I won't go either." Alright. Xiao Hua already knew the outcome when Fairy Hongxia looked at Li Zongbao. He made a prompt decision. "Since that's the case, you all be careful. Black Bear, if you protect your mistress, don't let her get hurt." "I understand." Yuanya didn't dare to delay, and hurriedly bowed and answered. Black Bear's spirit shouted, "Don't worry, Sect Master. With me here, I won't let Mistress lose a single strand of hair." "Brother Xiao, there's still me." Huang Mingxiang didn't miss the opportunity to shout, "I want to go to your Kunlun Immortal realm." Xiao Hua glared at Huang Mingxiang, and in a flash, he landed beside the sword gourd. "You heartless person." Huang Mingxiang pouted and stomped his feet in midair. He wanted to fly over, but he didn't dare to provoke Xiao Hua. In a moment, thousands of nascent soul cultivators flew over and surrounded them. The leading disciple bowed and said, "I'm here on Sect Master's orders to protect the seniors. Let's go." Yuanya saw Xiao Hua flying away and ordered the leading disciple. "Yes." The disciple responded and gave the order. A Pleiades demon-devouring immortal array was formed, and under the disciple's command, it moved towards the north of Sky Patrol City. At this moment, the four spirits' blood curse had been completely broken, and the sword gourd's spirit-slaying vital light was only nailed to the fire dragon crystal. The silver tiger crystal from before had already merged with the fire dragon crystal. Xiao Hua landed and felt the rich yin and yang energy around the fire dragon crystal. He also saw two beams of spirit-slaying vital light falling from the crystal, Xiao Mao and Hanba. That was close. Xiao Hua thought to himself with lingering fear. Fortunately, Xiao Mao and Hanba are both inside the fire dragon crystal, and their bloodlines are somewhat similar, otherwise, the crystal would have collapsed long ago. At this point, the two of them should be fine, and they just need to wait for it to succeed. As he spoke, Xiao Hua raised his hand, and the spirit-slaying vital light was quickly absorbed into the sword gourd, and then the sword gourd landed in Xiao Hua's hand. Xiao Hua looked around with some regret and laughed. "Seems like that book Immortal is also a coward. I placed the sword gourd here, and he didn't dare to take it." Book Immortal naturally wouldn't agree. He had already seen through such a small trick, and it was impossible for him to take the bait. Xiao Hua felt bored, and as the Kunlun mirror swayed, It absorbed the fire dragon crystal into the space, and then looked around for a moment, and asked in a low voice, "What do you think is the difference between this punishment array and an ordinary demonic array?" In front of the sect masters of the Dawn Rain continent, it was obviously not suitable for Demon Venerable Shi to appear, but he had already checked the punishment array without anyone noticing. Hearing Xiaohua's question, Demon Venerable Shi hurriedly replied, "Big brother, this punishment array should be an extremely powerful immortal defense array, because it was set up by the book Immortal, and on the Dawn Rain continent, the immortal defense array is restricted by the laws of the continent, and also limited by the materials, so it can only display 30% of its power. The most important thing is that the Dawn Rain continent doesn't have noble spirit, or rather, although there is noble spirit, this noble spirit can precipitate very little of the human race's literary chi, and it isn't enough to support the needs of the punishment array, so the book Immortal has to rely on the 81 punishment pillars to maintain the punishment engraved chains and the laws of the array. Previously, when you were fighting with the book Immortal's 5 chi incarnation, I had already carefully looked at the source of the punishment engraved chains. They all came from the 81 punishment pillars. If Big Brother wants to break the array, he has to push down the 81 punishment pillars." Xiaohua nodded and said, although Big Brother didn't look carefully, he saw the bamboo slips coming out from the punishment pillars, and the book Immortal wanted to change the rules of the punishment array, so Big Brother felt that these punishment pillars might be the array core of the punishment array. That's why Big Brother sent the Fortune Gate disciples to break the array. But, if that's the case, Big Brother should have pushed down the punishment pillars at the beginning, but now he missed the opportunity. No. Demon Venerable Shi hurriedly shook his head and said, "These 81 punishment pillars need to be pushed down at the same time. Big Brother pushed them down first. There's no meaning. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it as a reward, and thank you for all kinds of support. Thank you to Starry Sky Recreation 8 and other fellow Taoists for your support." Chapter 5201. After saying that, Demon Venerable Shi hurriedly added, "Big Brother, you underestimated this punishment array. Although this punishment array can only exert 30% of its power, since it was able to set up a punishment array near the Sky Patrol City, it's impossible for ordinary disciples to destroy it. Moreover, this book Immortal was originally a human. Since he became a demon, he must have a motive. This punishment array is a punishment array of Confucian cultivators. Maybe it's the blood sacrifice array of the book Immortal. Previously, when Xing Ming's chains twitched, many low-level disciples died. This little brother has already seen their flesh and souls being absorbed by Xing Ming's chains. Xiaohua squinted his eyes and looked at the tide of people rushing to different parts of the punishment array under the command of the Fortune Gate disciples. He nodded slightly and said, "Looks like this book Immortal really lives up to his name. In the 4 continents, I'm afraid only the Heaven Alliance, Tao Alliance, and Fortune Gate can break this punishment array. Even the Great Sage Temple, Dragon Island, Immortal Palace, and Thunder Temple can barely do it." That's right. Demon Venerable Shi chuckled and said, "Only Big Brother's Golden Crow Immortal Slaying Demonic Array can resist this punishment array. We can't do anything." Actually, that's not necessarily true. Xiaohua had already made up his mind. He waved the Kunlun mirror in his hand and said, "If it weren't for the fact that there are so many humans in the punishment array, we would have killed the enchanted book Immortals one by one. I don't believe we can't kill him." "Didn't Big Brother say that?" Demon Venerable Shi laughed and said, "All assumptions don't count. After all, if nothing happens..." Boom boom boom. Xiaohua activated the Kunlun mirror in his hand and hundreds of quasi-9 tribulation scattered souls flew out and formed the Golden Crow Immortal Slaying Demonic Array around Xiaohua. Without waiting for Xiaohua to say anything, the hundreds of scattered souls maintained the Golden Crow Immortal Slaying Demonic Array and flew in all directions. Damn it. As soon as the scattered nascent soul flew out, an exasperated voice came. In the sky, a book Immortal holding a flying sword, a book Immortal riding a black horse, a book Immortal holding a flute in his hand, a book Immortal with a quiver on his waist, and a book immortal holding an axe with his bare arm all appeared. The book immortal holding a flying sword in his hand could not help but say angrily, "How many supreme masters of the human clan are there in your Kunlun fairyland?" "I'm not sure." Xiaohua shrugged and said, "Senior, if you want to know, you might as well come in and take a look." While speaking, Xiaohua activated the Kunlun mirror. A 5-colored light beam shot up into the sky and shone towards the book immortal holding the flying sword. Along with the sound of sizzling, the book immortal holding the flying sword broke into pieces. The face of the book immortal holding the flying sword changed drastically. His body swayed and flew to the side. When the book immortal with the flying sword moved, the other book immortals also scattered like birds and beasts. Ha! At this moment, the Thunder Immortal, Feng Wu, Huang Tong, and Taoist which all flew over and surrounded the 5 Qi doppelgangers. The Thunder Immortal laughed unreasonably and rubbed his hands together. Thick thunderbolts started to wreak havoc again. The flying sword immortal saw that the thunderbolts were like tides and confined the space around him. How could he not know the intention of the Thunder Immortal? He roared angrily and waved his hands. Tens of thousands of book immortals' chains appeared in the space around him. Puff! The flying sword immortal breathed a mouthful of true qi into the book immortal's chains. Immediately, the chains emitted a dazzling golden light. The book immortal's axe-shaped chains transformed into flying swords. Buzz buzz. All the chains trembled and easily covered the space around the Thunder Immortal. Then, the flying sword immortal's body swayed and a force that was beyond the 9th level of true qi appeared around him. Crack! As soon as this force appeared, the restrictive spells of heaven and earth fell from the sky. However, where the restrictive spells of heaven and earth fell, the book immortal's chains, which had transformed into flying swords, emitted dazzling sword light and blocked the power of law. My goodness! The Thunder Immortal was surprised and yelled, "You have such a divine ability?" The flying sword immortal waved his hand and the thunderbolts disappeared bit by bit. They didn't even get close to the flying sword immortal. The flying sword immortal raised his hand and pointed a finger. A flying sword came from the sky and instantly covered the space within 100 miles. Wherever the sword light pointed at, everything was destroyed. The flying sword immortal laughed wildly and said, "Ha, ignorant kid, you don't deserve to know the divine ability of a heavenly court immortal." Unfortunately, as soon as the flying sword immortal finished speaking, the thunderbolts around the Thunder Immortal also surged. A force that was beyond the 9th level of true qi was released without fear. At the same time, the Thunder Immortal slapped the top of his head. Boom! 5-colored true qi mixed with thunderbolts flew out and condensed into a huge thunderous hand that was twice as powerful as before. As the huge hand grabbed at the air, all the sword lights within 100 miles dimmed. How is this possible? The flying sword book immortal was dumbfounded. However, just as he was lost in thought, Xingming's chains shattered, and the laws of heaven and earth fell like a waterfall, imprisoning the flying sword book immortal's divine ability. Of course, the divine ability on the Thunder Immortal's hand that surpassed that of the Dawn Rain continent also disappeared. Even so, the flying sword immortal still couldn't escape the fate of being killed by the power of life and death. His entire body was shattered and turned into true qi. Of course, this result was beyond the flying sword immortal's expectation. However, it was still acceptable. After all, as long as the punishment formation was not broken, he would be immortal. Unfortunately, the flying sword immortal still underestimated the Thunder Immortal's insidiousness. The moment he turned into a wisp of true qi, the Thunder Immortal unfolded his Taoist robe. With a whoosh, a black and white light curtain fell from the sky. The spirit-killing vital light pierced through the punishment formation and pierced into the void. A hoarse scream was heard in the void. At the place where the spirit-killing vital light was torn, a wisp of true qi engraved with strange bloodstains was revealed. A primordial spirit in the shape of a human was vaguely hiding in the true qi. The spirit-killing vital light was nailed to the head of this human figure. Just as I expected. The Thunder Immortal smiled and pointed at the sword gourd. With a light crack, the spirit-killing vital light pierced through the head of the human figure and cut off its head. The flying sword Immortal's primordial spirit was killed. The other primordial spirits were all in a panic. They didn't dare to hesitate anymore and tried to fly away. Unfortunately, since they had found the way to kill the primordial spirit of the book Immortal, how could Xiaohua and the others let these 5 Qi avatars escape? Feng Wu, Huang Tong, and Taoist priest-sorcerer all sneered and blocked the other avatars. These avatars saw that they were no match for Xiaohua and the others, so they all used their magical powers to resist. However, in the face of an opponent who was stronger than them and the spirit-killing vital light, the other 4 avatars were killed in a short time. Since the book Immortal's 5 Qi clones had been killed, the entire punishment formation changed once again. The 100,000 snowy plains under the control of the punishment formation shook violently, and the bamboo slips that destroyed everything in the bamboo slips began to collapse. The inscriptions on the armor, the bamboo slips, the scrolls, the ink brushes, the mountains of literature, the seas of words, and other objects that covered the world also began to be destroyed. Humph, humph. Around the punishment array, cold snorts sounded one after another. Xiaohua was shocked. He raised his head and saw that the punishment pillars around the punishment array had already transformed into human forms. Every human form had the appearance of a book Immortal. Seeing this, Xiaohua was not shocked but happy. He said coldly, "Since the punishment formation has revealed its true form, how can you escape?" Human Mahayana realm. The 81 book Immortals spoke at the same time. I didn't expect that the Dawn Rain continent, where Taoism is declining, would have an anomaly like you. However, since you forced me to appear, it's time for you to die. Oh! Xiaohua was taken aback. He looked at the 81 indomitable book Immortals and then looked at the hundreds of scattered nascent souls who were still maintaining the Golden Crow Immortal slaying demonic formation. He was extremely puzzled. After all, when he released the scattered nascent souls, he didn't hide it from the avatars. How could the true body of the book Immortal not know? Before Xiaohua could think about it, he saw the book Immortal's body near the book Immortal. However, this time, the Immortal's chains did not jump into the punishment formation. Instead, they broke apart in the air and turned into numerous Immortals' axes. These tens of millions of Immortals' axes circled in the air for a moment and quickly fell on the book Immortal's child body. In just a moment, the child body turned into a huge axe. "In my name, I punish the world." 81 earth-shaking voices were heard. The 81 Immortals' axes were activated at the same time. The sharp blades cut through the air and the entire punishment formation shrunk toward the center. Seeing that the punishment formation was shrinking, the faces of the hundreds of scattered nascent soul cultivators turned solemn. They raised their hands in unison and formed an immortal art. Layers of bright silver light emanated from their bodies, and thunderous forces condensed in the Golden Crow Immortal slaying demon formation, ready to be unleashed. Xiaohua flew in the air and looked around coldly. He said loudly, "Those who send out their troops with a reason are invincible. How can those who send out their troops without a reason be victorious? Those who control the punishment of the heavens and do righteous things will never be defeated. Those who act rashly because of selfish desires will harm the harmony of the heavens and harm the benefits of the earth. Heaven and earth must kill them. Everyone listen to my command, kill to stop killing. Kill." The hundreds of scattered souls roared. The power of thunder borrowed the momentum of the Golden Crow Immortal slaying demon formation to produce the power of thunder punishment. The hundreds of thunderbolts met the 81 Immortal slaying demon formation. When the punishment formation met the demon formation, the heavens and earth shook. The entire space of 10,000 miles fell into a kind of dusk. The originally clear sky was now filled with fierce winds. Large patches of dark clouds covered the already pale sun. Not only that, huge cracks appeared in the sky. Hail, wind, and thunder mercilessly fell. Looking at the ground again, dozens of huge cracks also appeared on the snowy plains. As the cracks expanded with a rumbling sound, mountain rocks burst and snowy peaks collapsed. Layers of strange underground wind also soared into the sky and intertwined with the heavenly wind. It was as if countless large hands were tearing the heavens and earth apart. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, and reward. Thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 5202. Although there was a strange phenomenon between heaven and earth, Xiao Hua and the others stood in midair with joy on their faces. Because the 81 copies of the Book Fairy were no match for Xiao Hua's hundreds of quasi-ninth tribulations scattered nascent souls. Under the life or death blow of the two formations, the 81 axes were smashed into pieces. When the 81 punishment pillars fell, the punishment formation was also destroyed by Xiao Hua. All the previous illusions turned into nothingness, and the punishment formation that covered tens of thousands of miles in the direction of the sky-patrolling city also disappeared like smoke. Good. The leaders of the various sects on the Morning Rain continent finally let out a long sigh of relief. They felt like they had survived a disaster. However, the faces of Xiao Hua and the others did not relax at all, because he and Feng Wu had already released their divine thoughts and saw clearly within tens of thousands of miles. When the punishment formation was destroyed, no primordial spirit or genuine qi escaped from the 81 punishment pillars. If the demonized Book Fairy was not destroyed with the punishment pillars, then the demonized Book Fairy was not in the punishment formation at all. An obscure groan sounded between heaven and earth. The source of the sound was the sword tomb. However, after the sound was heard, the color of the entire world changed. A majestic, austere, and submissive aura spread rapidly from the source of the sound. The sky, which had fallen into chaos and disorder due to the collision between the punishment formation and the golden crow fairy slaying demonic formation, instantly became orderly. All the broken cracks in the void produced inscription chains. The torn clouds also stagnated and quietly took shape one by one. Some were characters, some were bamboo joints. Even on the ground, the torn gullies and abysses surged with noble qi at the same time. This noble qi was slightly different from before. There was a trace of golden light in it, and the rich precipitation of human culture gave out a kind of decay and antiquity. This noble qi did not condense into inscription chains, but turned into the shape of mountains, paving the way for the broken ground. After a deafening groan, the world fell silent again. No one dared to make a sound. They all held their breaths and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The sky gradually turned into the law of punishment. The law of punishment was mixed with bamboo, giving off a suffocating aura. The earth gradually turned into the law of punishment. After when Shan condensed, pillars of Oran Qi silently spread out like pillars of punishment. The aura that made people tremble leaked out from the pillars of punishment. Admittedly, Xiao Hua had also cultivated Confucian cultivation and had already reached the stage of 5 Qi's unifications. However, he didn't comprehend more about the divine ability of punishment and didn't understand what this heavenly punishment and earthly punishment meant. However, seeing the strangeness of the world, how could he not know that a great calamity of life and death would follow? Xiao Hua inwardly cursed, then raised his voice. Fellow Taoists, Fortune Gate disciples, form the Metropolis Star Formation. Following Xiao Hua's command, the inexplicable space under the sword tomb where the demonic Confucian cultivators had flown out was still filled with black gas. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, the pitch-black and blood-red colors suddenly boiled. It was like a myriad of streams returning to their origin as they surged towards a certain spot in space. When the black qi and blood-red color in space disappeared, a human-shaped shell that was 10,000 feet in size was revealed. This body was covered by black qi. Within the black qi, there were countless blood tattoos that swam like spiritual snakes. Under the black qi and blood tattoos, there was a faint golden color that pierced out. The pitch-black and blood-red color fell into the human-shaped shell and covered it again. Countless devil and blood tattoos surged, and a huge battle armor was born. The face of the human-shaped shell was still covered by black qi, and no one could see its true appearance. However, at this time, 2 sharp sword-like eyes appeared from the devil qi and pierced through the devil qi. A pair of golden eyes appeared in the devil chi. At first, there was a layer of confusion in the eyes, but it quickly turned cold. The huge body slowly sat up, and with every inch it sat up, the entire space trembled a little. The heaven and earth in the vicinity of Sky Patrol City was so quiet that no one dared to disturb the order of heaven and earth. Xiao Hua's order resounded between heaven and earth. It was so loud and so bold. The majesty in this voice was no less than the heaven punishment and earth punishment that was formed previously. Everyone suddenly broke free from the heaven punishment and earth punishment. Yes. The group of Fortune Gate disciples responded in unison. Their respectful voices also reverberated through heaven and earth, breaking the invisible order. Woo woo woo. Before the Fortune Gate disciples could move, there was a strange phenomenon in the sky. In the direction of the Sword Tomb, tens of thousands of layers of red clouds rushed out and turned into tassels that covered the horizon. Not long after, the red clouds turned into the shape of a Confucian crown. The pressure on the Confucian crown was so heavy that it seemed as if the sky could not hold it. Boom! The Confucian crown fell and made a huge rumbling sound. Then the earth trembled, the hills collapsed, and a surge of evil chi rushed out from the ground. A black shadow that was thousands of feet tall slowly stood up from the ground. Every time this black shadow moved, the earth would tremble, and the laws of heaven and earth in the sky, which were invisible to the naked eye, would fall down once. Book Immortal. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and stood up. The surging aura had already flooded over. This aura seemed to be more powerful than Su Ji's and Fairy Xing Yu's immortal spiritual energy. If it was under normal circumstances, Xiao Hua might have activated the light escape art to escape. It was unwise to fight this book immortal who had turned into a demon. However, Xiao Hua was unable to abandon the several million Fortune Gates disciples and the 3 Dao's disciples, not to mention his lover, his family, and his brothers and sisters in the Fortune Gate. After a powerful divine sense swept over, 2 beams of clear light that could see through the mysteries of heaven and earth swept over. Xiao Hua and the Thunderbolt Immortal were already in their eyes. Xiao Hua knew that this was the birth of the Book Immortal, so he didn't have time to put the cultivators on the ground into his space. Without any hesitation, he waved his hand and said, "Fellow Taoists, let's go. Darling Xiao, be careful." Before the Thunderbolt Master and the others could say anything, a weak voice sounded in the distance. Xiao Hua looked up and saw Fairy Wuxia standing among the Fortune Gate disciples, shouting with all her might. Xiao Hua took a deep breath, and the gloominess in his heart was swept away. He nodded slightly at Fairy Wuxia, and there was only determination in his eyes. "Big brother Xiao, I love you." Huang Mingxiang's voice rang out. "When you kill the devil race, I will definitely marry you and become your Dao companion. I will wait for you to return victorious." If anyone else heard these words, they would definitely be overjoyed. However, when Xiao Hua heard these words, his heart couldn't help but tighten. Fortunately, Xiao Hua looked at Fairy Wuxia. Other than indifference, Fairy Wuxia's face was graceful, as if she didn't care about Huang Mingxiang's words at all. Xiao Hua's heart relaxed. He waved his hand at Fairy Wuxia and ordered, "Fellow Taoists, Fortune Gate disciples, listen to my orders. Protect the Dawn Rain Continent's human disciples and retreat towards the south. Fellow Taoists, help me to defend against the enemy." "Yes." The disciples replied in unison. More than 100 scattered nascent soul cultivators prepared to retreat. However, at this moment, boom boom boom. The earth and sky changed again. Countless red lotus-shaped flames surged out and surrounded all the cultivators. The hundreds of scattered nascent soul cultivators didn't dare to be negligent. They hurriedly formed the capital Heaven Star formation to block the red and black flames. Red Lotus Karmic Fire? Seeing this, Xiao Hua couldn't help but cry out, This book immortal who has turned into a devil, how does he know about the Red Lotus Karmic Fire?" "It's useless to say this now." Huang Tong looked at the book immortal who was walking towards them from afar. With every step he took, the earth trembled. A rare solemn expression appeared on Huang Tong's face as he said word by word, "Only by killing the book immortal can we escape from today's death." "That's right." Xiaohua knew what Huang Tong said was right. He nodded. Looking at the hundreds of scattered nascent soul cultivators, he said helplessly, "Fellow Taoists, this red lotus karmic fire is different from the ones we encountered. If you don't form the formation, I'm afraid they won't be able to resist for even a moment. I'll leave these human cultivators to you." After the scattered nascent soul cultivators nodded, Xiaohua urged his figure to fly towards the sword tomb. Seeing that Xiaohua had left, the hundreds of scattered nascent soul cultivators formed the capital Heaven Star formation to resist the red lotus karmic fire and slowly retreated towards the south of the Sky Patrol City. The red lotus karmic fire was very strange. It actually followed the capital Heaven Star formation and constantly devoured it. Just as Xiaohua said, this red lotus karmic fire was different from the red lotus karmic fire that Xiaohua encountered before. Even the capital Heaven Star formation formed by hundreds of quasi-ninth tribulation scattered nascent soul cultivators could not completely resist the invasion of the karmic fire. Within the capital Heaven Star formation, all the cultivators were tortured by their own karma. It was a kind of torture and a kind of training. The hundreds of quasi-ninth tribulation scattered nascent soul cultivators were already the most powerful force in the 4 major continents. With their protection, Xiaohua could rest assured. He urged his figure and led the Thunderbolt, Immortal, Feng Wu, and the others forward. Seeing that they were close, Xiaohua and the others looked at each other and stood in different directions. Thump, thump, thump. The footsteps of the enchanted book Immortal were like huge hammers that knocked on everyone's hearts. The threatening aura became stronger and stronger. In particular, Xiaohua had already seen clearly that near the body of the enchanted book Immortal, the void collapsed and the light and shadow distorted. Layers of heaven and earth restriction formations fell all the time. Every time a restriction formation of heaven and earth fell into the body of the enchanted book Immortal, the aura that surpassed the 9th level of origin power was annihilated. However, in just a moment, the black gas surged and the golden threads boiled. The aura that was not allowed by the 4 major continents surged out again. The aura of the enchanted book Immortal was so strong that the light and shadow were distorted. Xiaohua could not see the appearance of the enchanted book Immortal clearly. He could only see the vague Confucian crown and armor of the enchanted book Immortal, the quiver on his waist, and the sword in his hand. However, since he had seen the 5 Qi avatars of the enchanted book Immortal, Xiaohua could somewhat distinguish the appearance of the enchanted book Immortal. Looking at the ground under the enchanted book Immortal, it seemed that the ground could not bear the weight of the book Immortal. With every step the enchanted book Immortal took, the ground would collapse for hundreds of feet. At this point, not only was the sword tomb destroyed, but even the snowfield from the sword tomb to the Sky Patrol City was also destroyed. Heaven and earth were in a mess. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and reward it. Chapter 5203. Who are you? When the enchanted book Immortal approached, Xiaohua stood in front of him and asked in the language of the hidden immortal continent, "Why did you destroy the Dawn Rain continent? Why did you destroy the bloodline of the human race? Could it be that you are not a human?" Ha! The enchanted book Immortal laughed wildly. As the light and shadow flickered, 2 clear lights appeared. The clear lights landed on Xiaohua's golden body. The golden light of Xiaohua's golden body flickered like a candle in the wind. Who are you? Since you're the disciple of an immortal in the immortal world and have the strength to ascend to the immortal world, why are you still here worrying about irrelevant things? Don't you know that ascension is about understanding karma? You're tainted with so much karma, how can you get rid of the burden and ascend? As he spoke, the enchanted book Immortal glanced at Huang Tong, Feng Wu, and Taoist Witch. He frowned and said, "The 3 of you are even weirder. 2 of you have the body of a demon, and 1 of you is a taboo of the witch tribe. Why are you following this Taoist cultivator to cause trouble here? Also, why does your essence Qi look so similar to this human cultivator? If it weren't for your strength surpassing this Taoist cultivator, I would have treated you as one." Essence? Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have understood something. Essence was not something that mortal cultivators could know. Xiaohua had learned it from the mouth of the unrestrained heavenly demon in the ruins. He also knew that essence was the foundation of a cultivator's cultivation and the most important foundation for cultivating a clone. In particular, Xiaohua had not heard this term from Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu. Therefore, he was certain that not many immortals in the immortal world knew about essence energy. Since the demonized book Immortal had mentioned essence energy, he must have obtained a secret technique related to essence energy. Xiaohua even boldly speculated that the demonized book Immortal's blood sacrifice in the immortal world and the Dawn Rain continent might have been for essence energy. So Xiaohua asked tentatively, "What is essence?" "For you. How can you understand my language?" The enchanted book Immortal asked, "And you have the opportunity to meet an immortal who has a grudge with me?" Xiaohua pondered for a moment and replied, "This poor Taoist has never changed his name, nor has he changed his surname. May I know your name?" "Hee hee." The enchanted book Immortal chuckled and said, "You're quite thoughtful. You seem to want to know more about me. I don't mind telling you that my name is Ing Kuei." "Ing Kuei?" Xiaohua hurriedly tried to recall this name from the ancient records of Confucian cultivators. Unfortunately, before Xiaohua could think of anything, Ing Kuei asked again, "Since you are the disciple of those two immortals, let me ask you, where are they now?" Xiaohua did not answer immediately. Instead, he collected his thoughts and looked straight at Ing Kuei. He knew that the reason why Ing Kuei had told him so much and even told him his name was because he wanted to know the whereabouts of Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue. If he gave a bad answer, it might cause a bad reaction. However, Xiaohua couldn't help but laugh after thinking about it. At this point, do I still have a choice? Could it be that if he answered the book Immortal well, he wouldn't have to fight the book Immortal? Since this battle was unavoidable, why should he overthink it? Therefore, Xiaohua said faintly, "I'm Xiaohua. Although I'm not the disciple of the two immortals, the two seniors have given me pointers in my cultivation. As for the two juniors, I don't want to hide it from them. They have already returned to the immortal world." "Ah." Ing Kuei laughed, but there was a hint of sadness in his laughter. He said, "In that case, what else do I have to worry about? Give me your lives." As he spoke, Ing Kuei waved his hand and raised his sword. A sword intent that seemed to collapse instantly enveloped Xiaohua. Of course, as soon as the sword intent was born, the law of the realm fell again, weakening the unparalleled sword intent by more than 40%. Seeing the sword intent fall back into the law of the Dawn Rain continent, Xiaohua calmed down and said coldly, "Even if the two seniors of the immortal world are here, do you have any scruples? Don't you have any scruples when facing me? Where is the kindness in your heart?" Not bad, not bad." Ing Kuei waved his sword and leisurely made a sword flower with his wrist. He laughed wildly and said, "Since I was able to injure them in the upper realm, why should I be afraid of them here?" Before Ing Kuei waved his sword, the Thunder Immortal roared, "Little bastard, give me your life." Then, Lei Tingzi waved his hand and took out the sword gourd. The layer of black and white brilliance that covered the sword gourd was clear and beautiful. As the Thunder Immortal made a hand seal and touched the sword gourd, a black and white object with a nose and eyes appeared. Swish! When the black and white object opened its eyes, a black and white light screen rushed out of the sword gourd, as if it wanted to cover the whole world. This light screen seemed to be able to split the heaven and earth. It tore Ing Kuei's monstrous ferocious aura apart, and the black and white brilliance quickly and violently stabbed toward the top of Ing Kuei's head. "Hee hee, you can actually refine such a ferocious spirit-slaying light. It's really not easy." Ing Kuei was not too surprised by the spirit-slaying light. He even said to the Thunder Immortal in a somewhat mocking tone, "However, if you want to use this thing to kill me, you're dreaming." As he spoke, Ing Kuei slapped the top of his head. Boom boom boom. With a deafening roar, 5 streams of true qi gushed out like the Milky Way. What was special was that in the middle of the 5 streams of true qi, a half-petal-shaped scroll appeared. Although this petal-shaped scroll only had an outline and was only half a petal-shaped scroll, an incomparably vast aura gushed out from this outline. Gotcha! Before the aura gushed out, the laws of heaven and earth fell, trying to imprison this aura that did not belong to the Dawn Rain continent. Seeing this, Ing Kuei sneered and did not do anything. Swish! The scroll flipped, and the half-petal-shaped scroll opened and closed. The dense aura no longer gushed out violently. Instead, it spun and spread in all directions. As the aura spun, the 5 streams of true qi also changed rapidly, slowly turning into 5 huge whirlpools that spread out in all directions. Xiaohua's spirit-slaying light, which could tear heaven and earth apart, did not wait for it to fall on the top of Ing Kuei's head. The entire black and white light screen twisted extremely, and when it barely fell, it fell on the half-petal-shaped scroll. Following the birth and death of the flower and the flipping of the scroll, the black and white spirit-slaying light could not pierce it no matter what. 3 flowers at one's prominence. Xiaohua's Confucian cultivation had already reached the level of 5 qis unifying in origin. Moreover, his literary works were the works of many sages. Before seeing the 3 flowers at one's prominence, Xiaohua might not have known that this was the 3 flowers at one's prominence. However, when he saw the half-petal-shaped scroll on top of Ing Kuei's head, he immediately knew that this should be the 3 flowers at one's prominence cultivated by the heavenly quartz book Immortals. Damn it! Seeing that the spirit-slaying light had no effect, the Thunderbolt Immortal was furious. He urged his magic power, and above the sword gourd, the black and white light screen spun rapidly. With a rumbling sound, the spirit-slaying light rushed out, almost covering the surrounding area of several hundred miles. Unfortunately, no matter how much the Thunderbolt Immortal urged, the spirit-slaying light could only hover above the outline of the petal-shaped scroll, like the spring breeze that cherishes flowers. In the end, it could not fall. I don't believe it. The Thunderbolt Immortal was even more furious. With a loud roar, he withdrew the spirit-slaying light. With a wave of his hands, lightning surged around his body. Countless lightning bolts turned into a giant hand that covered the sky and the earth, and fell down, trying to imprison Ing Kuei. However, something happened that made Xiaohua even more dumbfounded. The Thunderbolt Immortal's invincible lightning hand had just fallen near Ing Kuei when it suddenly began to be annihilated, like a decaying lightning flower, withered. What's going on? The Thunderbolt Immortal was completely dumbfounded. Xiaohua squinted his eyes. He had already understood what was going on. When the Thunderbolt Immortal's lightning hand fell, a strange fluctuation appeared around Ing Kuei's body. This fluctuation was like a light shadow, invisible and intangible. When the lightning touched this light shadow, it immediately disappeared. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat, and he asked indifferently, "It seems like you were hiding near the sword mound. No wonder the sword mound was not struck by lightning." "Ha, you have a good eye." Ing Kuei did not deny it. He laughed and said, "This old man wanted to use the sword energy and evil energy of the sword mound to heal my injuries. Who would have thought that the sword mound would disappear for no reason? This is really disappointing." Speaking up to hear, Ing Kuei spun his hand and said, "However, this old man is also very lucky to have another kind of luck. And now you have delivered yourself to me. Presumably, you are cultivators who have already touched the laws of heaven and earth. You are more useful than ordinary cultivators in the mortal world, right?" While speaking, Ing Kuei pushed the Confucian crown on his head. Boom boom boom. Another 5 muffled sounds were heard. 5 pure Xiantian true qi spurted out and fell on the half-petal. Swish! That half-petal was like a butterfly spreading its wings. On the scroll, golden and dazzling inscriptions surged out. Kacha! Although the laws of heaven and earth kept falling, these inscriptions still disappeared in the 5 huge whirlpools. Woo-woo! At the same time, a strange clear light flew out from the whirlpools. Following the clear light were tens of millions of inscriptions of different sizes. These inscriptions were different from the golden and dazzling inscriptions from before. They were 9 different colors. These inscriptions seemed to have a life of their own. They flew everywhere with great spiritual energy, and wherever they landed, they tore apart the light curtain emitted by the whirlpools. Stars appeared one after another. These stars were abnormally bright. Mountains gushed out one after another. These mountains were graceful spirit bell spirits. rivers flowed by, and these rivers were crystal clear. Not good. Xiaohua was shocked. His figure flashed, and he seemed to fly away. However, when he saw that the stars were high and the sky was boundless, Xiaohua smiled bitterly. The book Immortal was indeed the book Immortal. He was not someone a cultivator in the mortal world could compare to. In just a moment, he had already fallen into the book Immortal's domain. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, and reward. Thank you for all kinds of support. Thank you to Alliance Master, Taoist Xiao, Yi no Joy no Sorrow, Kai Gue Hun, and other fellow Taoists for their rewards. Chapter 5204. Xiaohua pondered for a moment and was about to land. Boom, boom, boom. There was another roar from the ground. The snow region collapsed, and the sky patrolling city collapsed. Waves of noble spirit gushed out with the inscriptions on the armor. In just a moment, the realm of vicissitudes had appeared within tens of thousands of miles. Moreover, under the mountain walls, faint starlight poured out from time to time. In the brilliant Milky Way, the capital star formation formed by more than 100 scattered nascent souls decorated it like stars. The karmic fire of the red lotus was like a star flame, bright red. The world is vast, and all the land belongs to the king. All the people on the land are the king's subjects. Xiaohua, seeing that I'm here, why don't you surrender? Inkue laughed. Under the light of the stars and moon, an emperor's outfit appeared. This emperor's outfit was similar to the one Xiaohua had seen before, but there were some black threads on the side of the mountains and rivers. However, even so, Inkue's appearance was still covered by the pearl crown. Xiaohua's Dharma eyes could not see through it. Moreover, as Inkue laughed, the emperor's qi rushed toward Xiaohua like a tide. If an emperor's heart is for the people, even if he is high up in the palace, the people will still have him. If an emperor's heart is not for the people, even if he is the son of heaven, the people will still kill him. Xiaohua said coldly, "You must know that water can carry a boat, but it can also sink it." Oh! Inkue was stunned and said in surprise, "This is the way of the king of Confucian cultivators. How can an unorthodox Taoist like you know?" "So what if I know?" "So what if I don't know?" The thunderbolt Immortal laughed and raised his hand, holding the heaven-reaching staff in his hand. He said arrogantly, "I knew that killing you is the real way of the king." As he spoke, the thunderbolt Immortal's body swayed and rushed towards Inkue. "He has the emperor's qi, and I have all the people. Who can I be afraid of?" Huang Tong also laughed. She flapped her wings and a strong and strange soul force rushed out and attacked Inkue. Feng Wu sneered and flapped her wings. Boom, boom, boom. Countless cracks appeared in the starry sky as the true power of the stars and the moon shattered the vast space. Then, as Feng Wu waved her sharp claws, she attacked Inkue. When he looked at Taoist Witch again, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. His body began to manifest, and a huge human face and snake body appeared. Wasn't that the torch dragon wizard body? The torch dragon shaman body was crimson red, and there were faint images of the sun and the moon rotating around its body. Its sharp claws had already transcended space and were thrusting toward the back of Inkue's head. "Ihi, you are indeed powerful," Inkue sneered. Facing 4 powerful opponents whose strength surpassed the laws of heaven and earth, he did not panic at all. He raised his hand and pushed his pearl crown again. Boom, boom, boom. 5 deep roars sounded, and 5 streams of natal vital qi of different colors rushed into the sky. The 5 streams of natal vital qi were distorted in the sky, and they did not stop at all. They rushed into the vortex in the sky that was gradually disappearing. When the natal vital qi disappeared, buzz, buzz, buzz. Buzzing sounds were heard again, and 5 streams of great qi fell, blocking the thunderbolt Immortal, Feng Wu, Huang Tong, and Taoist Witch. One of them even fell in front of Xiaohua. The great qi streams quickly converged and formed into 5 qi doppelgangers that looked exactly like the book Immortal in the blink of an eye. Of course, these 5 doppelgangers were completely different from the previous 5. The aura around them was only slightly weaker than that of Ing Kuei, and was almost the same as that of the Thunderbolt Immortal. "How dare you compete with me, a country bumpkin?" Facing the Thunderbolt Immortal, the book Immortal snorted, and his clothes were revealed. As he waved his hand, several streams of great chi were generated from the void, and they fell in the air and condensed into a sword. This sword was exactly the same as the one in Ing Kuei's hand, and it shone with a colder light. Streaks of bloody aura were emitted from the sword, and no one knew how many lives had been killed by this sword. "Do you have the guts to be a noble? Today I will kill you, you little bastard, and become a noble myself." The Thunderbolt Immortal was indeed someone who had quarreled with Wenchu before, and he was able to come up with a counterattack. The heaven-reaching staff tore through the void and smashed toward the sword-wielding book Immortal. The sword-wielding book Immortal waved his sword proudly and rushed forward to meet the attack. Puff! As expected, when the heaven-reaching staff hit the sword, a yellow light appeared on the sword. The light was shattered, and so was the sword. However, just as the light was shattered, countless streams of great chi condensed, and the sword was reformed in an instant. The Thunderbolt Immortal knew that this was the effect of Ing Kuei's space domain. He smiled bitterly in his heart, and he could only shake the heaven-reaching staff in his hand. The end of the staff shook, and it smashed toward the sword-wielding book Immortal's shoulder. The sword-wielding book Immortal was Ing Kuei's doppelganger. Seeing the change in the staff's tail, he did not hesitate to shake his sword, and a sword flower appeared at the tip of the sword. The sword quickly flew over and tried to block the heaven-reaching staff. Right at this moment, the Thunderbolt Immortal grinned hideously. He shook his left hand, and the sword gourd flew out again. Whoosh! The black and white curtain of light soared into the sky again, and an overwhelming aura of life and death fell on the sword-wielding book Immortal's head. Unexpectedly, the sword-wielding book Immortal slapped his own head when he saw the spirit-slaying light falling on him. Boom! 5 streams of true chi similar to Ing Kuei's gushed out. They were not as rampant as Ing Kuei's Xiantian true chi, but the outline of a half-petal-shaped scroll was also revealed. The spirit-slaying light was blocked by the petals again. Damn it! The Thunderbolt Immortal completely gave up on the idea of using the spirit-slaying light. He cursed in a low voice and sent the sword gourd into Xiao Hua's space. In front of Xiao Hua stood another doppelganger of the book Immortal. This doppelganger was holding an axe, and it looked similar to the one Xiao Hua had met before. However, Xiao Hua did not pay attention to this doppelganger. Instead, he squinted his eyes and looked at Ing Kuei and the other fighting groups. Seeing that Xiao Hua did not make a move, the axe-wielding book Immortal did not dare to act rashly. He vigilantly released a magical power similar to divine thoughts and watched carefully. The other 3 book Immortals were similar to the doppelganger of the book Immortal that had appeared in the punishment array. One of them held a flute and fought with Feng Wu, while the other one held a bow and arrow and fought with Huang Tong. These 2 fights were very normal, and there was no clear winner or loser. However, the book Immortal with the head of a man and the body of a horse was now crazily colliding with the candle dragon that was transformed by Taoist Witch. They were like meteors tearing through the sky, and half of the vast space was filled with their crazy surging great chi. Whether it was Taoist Witch or the Centaur book Immortal, flesh and blood were torn apart from time to time. However, in such a tragic situation, Xiao Hua could still see that Taoist Witch had the upper hand. He was just using the power of the Centaur book Immortal to find out how to break the space that was condensed by Ing Kuei. Xiao Hua's gaze moved from the battle to the axe-wielding book Immortal in front of him, and his eyes revealed a thoughtful look. He had already understood that the 5 chi doppelganger in the punishment array was just the condensation of the 5 doppelgangers of Ing Kuei, and it might even be the condensation of the 5 doppelgangers. The 5 doppelgangers in front of him were the real doppelgangers of Ing Kuei. Judging from the strength of the 5 doppelgangers, Ing Kuei must have obtained some kind of secret technique that allowed him to learn the profound meaning of doppelgangers. He started to cultivate from the profound chi, and that was how he was able to create 5 powerful doppelgangers. In other words, Ing Kuei and Xiao Hua had similar opportunities. However, Xiao Hua had obtained the profound chi from the heavenly demon of freedom, while Ing Kuei had to use evil means to collect the profound qi from other creatures. Feeling that the Thunderbolt Immortal had sent the sword gourd back into the vast space, Xiaohua stopped thinking and slightly raised his head. Seeing Xiaohua move, the axe-wielding Book Immortal trembled. Obviously, he was frightened by Xiaohua's previous killing. Like a frightened bird, he roared and rushed toward Xiaohua. Xiaohua snorted coldly and waved his hand to take out the Kunlun mirror from the vast space. Ing Kuei had already taken the initiative, so he was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he was observing the battle like Xiaohua. Now that he saw Xiaohua take out the Kunlun mirror, he was not surprised. He asked curiously, "You can still use the storage device?" Xiaohua frowned. He knew that Ing Kuei's vast space had sealed the storage pouch and other items. However, the vast space was sealed by the qi of nature. It was not comparable to the colorful seashell's vast space, so Xiaohua's vast space could still be used. Xiaohua ignored Ing Kuei. Under the stimulation of his magic power, the celestial being revealed his Dharma body. He flew out while shaking his head. Then, he swung his fist and smashed it toward the axe-wielding Book Immortal. Not only was the axe-wielding Book Immortal shocked, but Ing Kuei was also surprised. Although the axe-wielding Book Immortal was stunned for a moment, he did not dare to hesitate. He still chopped down with his axe. The celestial being was also not afraid. He met the attack with his bare hands. Boom! Amidst the explosion, the celestial being's fist was not damaged at all. However, the axe-wielding Book Immortal's axe was smashed into pieces. The axe-wielding Book Immortal was caught off guard. The celestial being even more despicable. He lifted his foot and kicked the axe-wielding Book Immortal's nose. Roar! The axe-wielding Book Immortal was shocked. He quickly retreated, and half of his body even disappeared into the void. He wanted to avoid this humiliating kick. Unfortunately, the celestial being didn't show any mercy. His foot chased after the axe-wielding Book Immortal for several hundred kilometers like a shooting star. Finally, it landed on the axe-wielding Book Immortal's nose with a puff sound, dispersing the black mist on his face. Damn it! Although the axe-wielding Book Immortal was not injured, this humiliation was deeply engraved in his heart. He cursed angrily and waved his axe again to fight the celestial being. I underestimated you. Ing Kuei saw that the axe-wielding Book Immortal and the celestial being were far away from each other. He withdrew his gaze and looked at Xiaohua, who was facing him directly. He said meaningfully, I didn't expect you to have the Kunlun mirror. You should have known. Xiaohua looked at the Kunlun mirror and sneered. It's just that you have 5 clones, so you don't care about I at all. Ah. Ing Kuei waved his hand and raised the sword once again. Countless mighty energy pillars smashed down, and countless sword wills gushed out of the sword like 100 flowers blooming at the same time. Then, Ing Kuei's proud and wild laughter could be heard. That's right. In my eyes, you are nothing but an ant. You're not worthy of my attention at all. You can thank you to the Alliance Masters, Mei Xianjun and Kai Guanhuan for their tips. Chapter 5205. Facing such a Ing Kuei, Xiaohua couldn't help but think of the Confucian emperors he met before. Normally, he wouldn't hesitate to release Jiuzhou Cauldron. Even if when Chu was here, he would also release Heaven and Earth Pagoda. In the etiquette of Confucian cultivators, there was a strict distinction between heaven, earth, ruler, parents, and teacher. However, Xiaohua didn't dare to try facing the demonized Book Immortal of the Heavenly Court. Not to mention that this was the Book Immortal's space domain. The countless stars in the sky were like melodies, and the countless clear streams on the ground were like vast rivers. Just the Book Immortal's unpredictable 3 flowers at one's prominence was enough to make Xiaohua unsure who would be suppressed in the end if he used the 9 continents cauldrons. Since that was the case, Xiaohua didn't intend to reveal his Confucian cultivator's divine ability. As he rubbed his hands, countless thunderbolts surged. He wanted to condense 5 big thunderbolts to block the sword. However, as soon as the thunderbolts of various colors surged out, they were immediately annihilated. Only then did Xiaohua come to his senses. He hurriedly withdrew and prepared to dodge the sword light. Whoosh! The sword light seemed to be far away, but with a wave, it actually surpassed the limit of space and appeared above Xiaohua's head like a waterfall. A bone-piercing cold force had already shrouded Xiaohua. Not to mention Xiaohua's blood vessels being shackled, even the magic power around his body was frozen. Xiaohua hurriedly raised his hand and the Kunlun mirror's light pillar surged out. Boom! It broke through the air and met the sword. Buzz! The sword slashed down and landed on the light pillar. With a sudden roar, the sword actually cut into the light pillar. Xiaohua felt the Kunlun mirror in his hand suddenly become heavy. Then the light pillar was cut in half by the sword light and collapsed with a loud bang. Xiaohua was shocked. He hurriedly moved his body and wanted to teleport. Unfortunately, before he could activate his magic power, he felt that the space around him was like a solid barrier, preventing him from teleporting. Xiaohua frowned. Looking at the raging waves of righteous qi around him, he immediately activated wind escape. Whoosh! Xiaohua's body floated more than 10 miles away. Ha! Yin Kuei was stunned again. While the sword in his hand chased, he raised his left hand and a bow appeared out of thin air. Ka-cha! As expected, several layers of the laws of heaven and earth fell and covered the bow. Yin Kuei grinned coldly. From his left arm, a few golden beams shot out, landing on the bowstring and instantly forming into a small golden arrow. As Yin Kuei pulled back his left arm, it was as if another invisible arm was pulling the bowstring, causing it to produce a creaking noise. Along with the noise, a strange phenomenon occurred within tens of miles to the left. Thousands of lights and shadows were twisting and distorting, and wisps of great energy that looked like crystals were seeping into the small arrow. Even the void was shrinking into the small arrow along with the strange phenomenon. Xiaohua trembled with fear when he sensed a sharp pain that pierced straight into his bone marrow and even into his soul. He didn't hesitate in the slightest. His figure moved once more, and he flew high into the starry sky. You think you can leave? Yin Kuei grinned coldly. Clang! The clear sound of the bowstring pierced straight into Xiaohua's ears. Woo! At the same time, a sharp whistling sound came from the bowstring. The small golden arrow paused for a moment, and soon after, a cluster of blurry lights and shadows appeared one after another, and the small golden arrow suddenly disappeared. Rumble! An extremely loud rumbling sound came from the void. Invisible waves seemed to collapse, and in the blink of an eye, they arrived at Xiaohua's back. Isn't this too powerful? Xiaohua felt that the void behind him, in front of him, and even to the left was cracking inch by inch. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. He forcibly resisted the urge to form an immortal seal and pushed the wind escape technique to the extreme. Pung! A loud rumbling sound came from the left, and then it suddenly disappeared. A cluster of bright and dark light appeared in front of Xiaohua's eyes, and a colorless, invisible sharp object stopped at Xiaohua's back. Xiaohua didn't dare to hesitate. His figure swayed, and he fell into the cluster of light beside him. Swish! As if his body moved according to his heart's desire, Xiaohua's figure had just moved, and he had already fallen into the cluster of light. However, he only fell into the cluster of light. Pung! A loud rumbling sound came from the left. When the rumbling sound subsided a little, Xiaohua discovered that he was already very far away. And 1,000 miles to his left, crack, 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 the void rumbled unceasingly, and layers of golden brilliance filled the air. Lucky! Xiaohua knew that it was the small golden arrow that missed its target, and he couldn't help but cry out in his heart. What kind of escape technique is this? Before Xiaohua could steady himself, Yin Kuei's surprised voice came from not far away. It's actually so powerful? Looking at Yin Kuei's huge body swaying like smoke, Xiaohua glanced at his left hand with vigilance. Fortunately, the bow on his left hand was already gone, and the terrifying aura was also rapidly declining. Xiaohua let out a sigh of relief. He knew that even Yin Kuei, the Heavenly Quartz Book Immortal, couldn't casually use this shocking attack. Only then did he say coldly, "Our Taoism has a myriad of magical powers. How could a Confucian cultivator like you know them?" You're just a little cultivator who hasn't set foot in the immortal world of Taoism, and you still dare to be arrogant in front of me? Don't forget, I've also injured the immortals of the immortal world. Inkue laughed again. He raised his sword, and the sword slashed toward Xiaohua. Xiaohua hurriedly urged his magic power, and the Kunlun mirror once again produced a 5-colored light beam to meet the sword. Swish! Strangely, just as the sword touched the light beam immediately distorted, and the sword actually made a light whistling sound. At this time, above Inkue's head, boom! A light beam that was exactly the same as the Kunlun mirror fell from the sky. Unfortunately, just as the light beam was produced, Inkue's figure flashed, as if he had already expected it. His left hand grabbed, and a fist-sized golden seal appeared in his hand, and he chanted a mantra. Woo! The golden seal flew obliquely and smashed behind the light beam. Ka. Under the suppression of the golden seal, hundreds of Xingming chains were produced, sealing the void. In the distorted void, Xiaohua's face was filled with disbelief. The dream mirage butterfly was flapping its dreamy wings, and it was resting on his shoulder. However, at this time, near the dream mirage butterfly, an indescribable fluctuation flickered, firmly sealing the dreamy light and shadow. Go! Seeing that Inkue had seen through his intention, Xiaohua hurriedly raised his hand and pointed, and the seal of overturning the sea broke through the void. Boom! The seal of overturning the sea hit the golden seal, and countless void folds rapidly appeared. Light and shadow flashed, and then the seal of overturning the sea was knocked back 100 li. Inkue looked at the seal of overturning the sea, then at the dream mirage butterfly on Xiaohua's shoulder. He was somewhat surprised and said, "You have a lot of tricks up your sleeve. I can't believe this spirit bird can confuse my heavenly eyes, and this spirit item can actually survive my golden seal. You have really made me look at you with new eyes. This fellow is too strong." Xiaohua sighed, and had no choice but to activate the Kunlun mirror. Reverend Yun gave a furious roar, swaying his dragon tail as he flew out of the light beam. Layers of dragon aura overflowed from where he landed, while wisps of dragon runes rushed out like swimming fishes, wiping out more than half of the mighty aura. Dragon clan? Inkue was struck dumb. Looking at Reverend Yun, whose dragon aura was as mighty as his, he could not help but cry out, "There are dragons from the dragon realm in this Kunlun immortal realm?" However, it was only a brief moment of surprise, as a golden light shone out from under his pearl crown. Then he was enlightened and said, "I understand now. This dragon is not a real dragon from the dragon realm, but one who is preparing to enter the dragon realm. This is wonderful. I'm just looking for a dragon to change my body, and you've delivered a dragon to me. Heaven is really at my will." Reverend Yun sneered as he thrust his dragon claw toward Inkue, unleashing a mighty dragon aura that suppressed the aura of an emperor. "So what if there are two of you?" Inkue showed no fear, as he took a step forward in midair. Another loud rumble echoed out. Countless golden threads were seen darting about in Inkue's body, which was shrouded in black smoke, while his body expanded rapidly. While Xiaohua was struck dumb with amazement, another head grew out from the back of Inkue's head, and another pair of arms and legs stretched out from it. Like a celestial being, Inkue had transformed into his nascent divinity Dharma idol with 2 heads and 4 arms. Inkue's nascent divinity Dharma idol was born with an axe in one hand. As it swung, it split the void and smashed toward Reverend Yun's sharp claw. As for the other nascent divinity Dharma idol, it unleashed a sword and a golden seal at Xiaohua at the same time. Reverend Yun hesitated when he saw the huge axe was no match for Inkue, wondering if he should take out the pango axe. But, after a brief thought, he gave up the idea. After all, they were not in a desperate situation yet, and the pango axe was a mighty weapon that could destroy the 3 peaks of heaven, earth, and man. Reverend Yun dared not to take the risk. Therefore, Reverend Yun swung his dragon tail, sweeping across the void and smashing toward Inkue's arm. Another unarmed one. Inkue laughed. "Don't tell me you don't even have a handy dragon item?" Before Inkue's voice could fade away, a silver flute appeared in his other hand. As he waved the flute, strange noises could be heard. Even though Xiao Hua and Reverend Yun were strong, they still felt dizzy and their souls were about to shake. Damn it! Xiao Hua cursed under his breath as he retreated quickly. Once again, he exercised the Kunlun mirror and called out, Namo Maitreya Buddha. Then, a Buddhist chant that shook the heaven and earth was heard. Stepping on the 9-tiered lotus throne, he stepped out of the void with the pure water vase and Permitha in his hand. No way! Seeing the appearance of the Buddha Maitreya Buddha, whose Buddhist light filled the entire space, and the sound of the wooden fish and the chanting of sutras pierced his ears like needles, Inkue was completely dumbfounded. He murmured, There's another Buddhist disciple? However, when Inkue saw the 9-tiered lotus throne of the Buddha Maitreya Buddha and the light behind his head, he exclaimed again, And he's a bodhisattva with the fruit of Buddha? Since when did the Buddhist sect exist on Dawn Rain continent? Not only was he shocked, but a golden light flashed in his pearl crown. He saw the Buddha lotuses and the light around the Buddha Maitreya Buddha overflowing with the river of faith. In the river of faith, worlds of all sizes were born, and there was no end to them. He groaned again, Damn it! Not only does he have the fruit of Buddha, but he's also a future Lord Buddha. P.S. To all the fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Chidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, or tip it. Thank you to the leader of Starry Sky Reappears 8 and Yi Wui No Joy. Chapter 5206. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Maitreya Buddha stepped out and chanted Buddha's name. Then, he formed a seal with one hand and sent out the Buddhist mantra. Wu. The huge word, swordsman, spun in the air and smashed toward Inkue. Maitreya Buddha was indeed the nemesis of Inkue. Although it was only the Buddhist mantra and did not have any special magical power, under the Buddha's light, the black gas around Inkue quickly converged and countless hair-like vortexes appeared on the surface of his body. The melody on the flute was suppressed by the Buddha's name and had long been annihilated. Xiao Hua was overjoyed. His figure flashed, and he was about to besiege Inkue with Maitreya Buddha and world venerables. However, before Xiao Hua could get close, Inkue's other face sneered. He waved his sword, and a shocking sword beam pierced through the air. Xiao Hua was helpless. As the Kunlun mirror swayed, the void shattered, and the power of space generated blocked the sword beam. Looking at Maitreya Buddha's mantra, Inkue, who was a little frightened, waved his hand that was holding the flute. Woo-woo! The sound of ghosts crying and wolves howling came from his hand and a red brilliance flew out. Within the brilliance, a blood-red skeleton was surrounded by the red lotus karmic fire. In its empty eye sockets, 2 scarlet spots shone greedily. Puff! The blood-red skeleton opened its mouth and spat out a stream of red lotus karmic fire, which turned into strange characters and met Maitreya Buddha's mantra of 9 syllables. When the red lotus karmic fire and mantra of 9 syllables collided, there was a strange sound. Then, countless black threads of light and even fog appeared. Wisps of netherworld aura rushed out in an incredible way. When the red lotus karmic fire disappeared, the mantra of 9 syllables was also annihilated. Gee! The blood-red skeleton opened its mouth and shouted, What a fat Buddha Lord! If I eat you, will I become a ghost master? After that, the blood-red skull let out a roar that sounded like a dragon's roar and turned into a blood column. One end of the blood column fell on Inkue's arm, while the other end turned into a ghost head that pounced on Maitreya Buddha. Damn it! This bastard's red lotus hellfire doesn't belong to the Buddhist sect. Seeing how arrogant the blood-colored skeleton was and how it wasn't afraid of the Buddha's light, Xiao Hua came to a realization and cursed inwardly, It's the red lotus karmic fire of the ghost cultivators. I'm afraid this skeleton isn't a simple skeleton. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to not fear the Maitreya Buddha. The Maitreya Buddha has met his match. While Xiao Hua was cursing inwardly, he roused his spirit and activated the Kunlun mirror. From time to time, he would also unleash the Tengjiao shears and fight against Inkue. Among the 5 incarnations of Inkue, the book Immortal was fighting against Taoist, the one with the flute was fighting against Phoenix Parasol, the one with the bow and arrow was fighting against Huang Tong, the one with the axe was fighting against Celestial, and the one with the sword was fighting against Thunder Immortal. These 5 book immortals and Xiaohua's 5 incarnations were fighting in 5 different directions. On the other hand, Ing Kuei's true form was his nascent divinity avatar with 2 heads and 4 arms, each holding a sharp weapon. The blood-colored skeleton was fighting against the Maitreya Buddha, the axe was fighting against Reverend Yun, and the other 2 arms were wielding a sword and a golden seal, smashing towards Xiaohua. Although Xiaohua had activated 2 spirit treasures, he was still not Ing Kuei's match. The Tengjiao shears could not stop the golden seal, and there were a few times when it almost hit Xiaohua's golden avatar. Even when the Tengjiao shears slashed at Ing Kuei's avatar, it failed to do anything. Xiaohua could not help but feel that he was at his wit's end. When he activated the Kunlun mirror and blocked Ing Kuei's golden seal, Xiaohua frowned and looked at the Celestial. The Celestial and the axe-wielding Book Immortal were fighting fiercely, and even the vast space in the sky was somewhat chaotic. A few stars surrounded both of them, pouring down an immense amount of noble energy to repair the space. The Celestial has 3 heads and 6 arms. If he is fighting against Ing Kuei's 2 heads and 4 arms, they should be able to complement each other. Xiaohua thought to himself. Of course, if the Maitreya Buddha and the world revered unleashed the Tree of 7 Wonders, Reverend Yun unleashed the Pangu axe, and I wielded the Slaughter Fiend saber, I think I can achieve victory with just 1 strike. But whether it is the Maitreya Buddha or the world revered or Reverend Yun, they will no longer be able to wield their magical items after the first strike. It will be a little troublesome to break the formation. But if I don't use these means now, it will be hard for me to fight against this fellow. Perhaps I have no choice but to summon the Slaughter Fiend? With that thought in mind, Xiaohua glanced at the space in the distance from the corner of his eyes, then retracted his gaze as if he was pricked by a needle. Fine, I'll summon the Slaughter Fiend then. Xiaohua clenched his teeth and thought to himself, even if the Slaughter Fiend is a member of the Fiend race, compared to this Book Immortal who has turned into a fiend, he is no different from the Maitreya Buddha and the world revered to the cultivators of Dawn Rain Continent. When Xiaohua pretended to activate the Kunlun mirror, his gaze swept past the water bottle in the hands of the Maitreya Buddha world-honored one. Xiaohua's eyes unconsciously lit up. His figure swayed, but he didn't make a sound. The Maitreya Buddha world-honored one received Xiaohua's instructions in his heart, and his figure also flew towards Xiaohua. When he got close, the Maitreya Buddha world-honored one raised his hand, and the water bottle fell into Xiaohua's hand. Oh! Ing Kuei had long been paying attention to Xiaohua and the Maitreya Buddha. Seeing the water bottle change hands, Ing Kuei was quite puzzled. However, the next scene made Ing Kuei's heart shrink. Xiaohua took the water bottle, raised his hand, and took out the willow branch. As he waved it, an invisible 10-colored rainbow bridge broke through the sky and fell, hitting the blood-colored skeleton. Although Ing Kuei did not know what this willow branch was, when the invisible rainbow bridge fell, he was instantly frightened. Almost without thinking, he shook, and the blood-colored skeleton on his left arm suddenly disappeared, as if it wanted to hide in the void. Unfortunately, even if the blood-colored skeleton disappeared, the 10-colored rainbow bridge still chased straight into the void. Puff! A very low sound came from the void, and then blood streaks flowed out like a spring. Within the blood streaks, countless black bubbles flew out and disappeared in the air. Oh! After the black bubbles, the blood-colored skeleton appeared with a howl. At this time, the blood-colored skeleton that was originally lingering around the skeleton had become abnormally dim. Even within the blood-colored skeleton, there were some cracks on the skeleton. What kind of spirit treasure is this? It seemed that Ing Kuei had never seen such a powerful spirit treasure in his life. He gasped, blocked Reverend Yun, Maitreya Buddha, and the Maitreya Buddha, then retreated quickly. He looked at Xiaohua in disbelief and asked. If it were before, Xiaohua would never have answered. However, at this moment he was holding the willow branch calmly. With a proud look on his face, he looked down at Ing Kuei and replied indifferently, "What? Aren't you the Book Immortal of the Heaven? I have so many helpers, but they are no match for you. Don't tell me you don't even know what this is?" Xiaohua could not see the expression on Ing Kuei's face, but there was already displeasure in his voice. "Ignorant boy," he said proudly. "How can you know what I've been through? Besides, how can you guess the vastness of this world with your current overall strength? There are too many secrets in this world that we don't know. What's so strange about me not knowing what you're holding in your hand? It's fine if you don't want to tell me, but when I kill you, won't it be mine?" Xiaohua did not answer Ing Kuei, but looked at the blood-red skeleton with great interest and asked, "If I'm not mistaken, this skeleton of yours should be a ghost cultivator, right?" Ing Kuei hesitated for a moment, as if he was unwilling to answer. But at last, he nodded and said, "Yes, this is indeed a ghost cultivator." "Actually," said Xiaohua smilingly, "I'm not surprised to see a ghost cultivator, but I'm surprised to see you, a book immortal of the heaven, cultivate a ghost cultivator. And you have even refined this skeleton into one of your incarnations. That's even more shocking to me." Boom, boom, boom. Right after Xiaohua's voice faded away, the entire space began to tremble. The sky, earth, and rivers faded away like the twilight, revealing countless stars that looked like stars. Some were rich, some were thin, some were fresh, and some were decaying. Mighty auras of various colors poured down from these stars. "Xiaohua!" Ing Kuei finally called out Xiaohua's name and asked word by word, "Who are you?" Xiaohua shrugged and said smilingly, "I'm Xiaohua. Aren't you hiding in the Sword Catacomb? I suppose you've heard of my name? No, you can't be a cultivator from Dawn Rain Continent, and you can't even be a cultivator from the mortal world." Ing Kuei's voice turned cold as he asked in a low voice, "You? Which immortal realm are you the reincarnation of?" You think too much." Xiaohua's expression remained unchanged as he said, "Well, let's make a simple deal. You answer my question, and I'll tell you what this thing is." "Fine, we'll do as you say." Ing Kuei glanced at Reverend Yun, Methria, and Buddha Si-Zun, who had surrounded him. Xiaohua raised his voice and said, "Fellow Taoists, please wait for a moment. It's not too late to strike after I've asked." "Noisy," Reverend Yun said unhappily, "let's finish this fellow quickly." Buddha Methreya put his palms together and said in a low voice, "Namo Methreya." "I don't understand." Xiaohua went straight to the point and asked, "You're a book immortal of the heaven, so how can you perform a blood sacrifice? And, for your own personal gain, you even wounded an immortal from the immortal realm? If you tell me how you became possessed by the fiend, perhaps I can help you." "Oomph." Ing Kuei snorted coldly and said, "Who told you I became possessed by the fiend? Are you talking about those two Qi immortals from the immortal realm? What a talkative fellow. How do you know that I'm now walking on a broad path, and that my previous cultivation is wrong?" Seeing that Ing Kuei refused to admit it, Xiaohua glanced at the battles in the distance and said with a smile, "Our Dao League has a technique of cloning. Normally, 1 or 2 clones are the limit, and even an immortal can't have 5 clones, can he? But what is special is that the overall strength of your 5 clones is very similar to yours, which is very different from the technique of cloning. I suppose your blood sacrifice is related to this technique of cloning, right?" How did you know?" Ing Kuei was shocked, and he asked again in disbelief. "P.S. To all the fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you, Alliance Leader 375,655, and Kai Gue Hun." Chapter 5207. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Of course I didn't know before, but when I saw this blood-red skull and the red lotus hellfire, I suddenly remembered that I once obtained a pitch-black spiritual item in my early years. It recorded the 7-eyed beautiful passion flame and the myriad strands technique. Isn't it similar to your red lotus hellfire and the ghost cultivator's doppelganger technique?" "I see." Ing Kuei understood. After thinking for a moment, he nodded and said, "In that case, tell me what spiritual item you have first, then I'll explain it to you." "It's a Buddhist item in my hand." Xiaohua raised his hand, and the blood-red skull quickly dodged in fright. "A Buddhist item?" Ing Kuei was even more confused and asked curiously, "You're a Taoist cultivator, how can you activate such a powerful Buddhist item?" This seems to be the second question. Xiao Hua said indifferently, "Why don't you tell me about your doppelganger technique first?" Alright. Inkue didn't know if he really wanted to know the origin of Permitha or if he wanted to take the opportunity to repair the ghost cultivator's doppelganger, so he answered in a low voice, "I'll explain it to you. When I was on duty in the Heavenly Court, I was ordered to go to the Taboo Star Field to kill the ghosts. However, when I killed the 4 ghosts, I accidentally obtained a broken lonely leaf. The myriad strands technique was recorded on it, just like what you know. At that time, I didn't care, but 1,000 years later, when I followed the great general of the West to quell the war in the Western Star Field, I saw many immortals who were about to die. These immortals couldn't be saved and could only wait for death, so I thought of the strange item needed for the doppelganger technique." By the time Inkue gave a simple explanation, Xiaohua had already understood that what Inkue needed was the energy essence. Just as he had expected, what Inkue was doing was not a real blood sacrifice, but just taking away the energy essence of the human race with the method of ghost cultivators. Xiaohua looked at the millions of human cultivators who were still protected by hundreds of scattered nascent soul cultivators in the distance and said with a bitter smile, "In that case, the strange item you need should only be found in the upper realm. The millions of humans on the Dawn Rain continent. Even if they're all sacrificed by you, I'm afraid it won't bring you much benefits." "I didn't plan to sacrifice the humans on the Dawn Rain continent," Inkue said indifferently. "If I wanted to, I would have killed all the Taoist cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent when I landed. It's just that I've started to awaken recently, so my avatars released their primordial spirits. Those avatars saw that the Fortune Gate's disciples were causing trouble with the Heavenly Patrol City's sword cultivators, so they came up with the idea on the spur of the moment and wanted to contribute to me." "That's great." Xiaohua rubbed his nose and said, "Since they aren't enough to fill the gaps between your Excellency's teeth, could your Excellency please let them go? If it was before, I would have definitely let him go." There was a hint of mockery in Inkue's voice as he continued, "If I were to release them now, I wouldn't even be a match for your Fortune Gate's hundreds of Ninth Tribulation scattered soul cultivators. So, tell me, can I let go?" Xiaohua narrowed his eyes as he stared at Inkue and said threateningly, "If I don't save those humans, can I ask all my fellow Taoists to work together and kill you first, then save those humans?" "Of course you can." Inkue acted as if Xiaohua wasn't talking about him and immediately replied, "However, you have to consider this carefully. As long as the hundreds of scattered soul cultivators formation disappears, I can guarantee that these millions of humans will be instantly killed by me. Also, I want to tell you that a person should keep his word. Please tell me the origin of this thing before you act." Inkue's words were naturally what Xiaohua was worried about. The hundreds of Ninth Tribulation scattered soul cultivators were just enough to protect the millions of cultivators, so it wouldn't be enough to spare one more to help. Xiaohua pretended to ponder for a moment before saying, "In fact, this thing isn't a Buddhist artifact, but a saint artifact." "Saint artifact?" Inkue was even more confused. "What saint artifact? Where is it from?" As soon as Inkue's voice fell, above the sky, behind the dozens of literati stars, layers of holy aura gushed out like a tide, followed by bursts of prayers and praises. In the midst of these sounds, cracks appeared in the vast space, and within them, countless olive branches, grapes, and other objects were revealed. What was special was that as the holy light shone down from the sky, boulders, streams of water, sharp swords, and cross-shaped stars were born. When the cross-shaped stars filled a corner of the sky and blocked the hundreds of literati stars, Zhang Jie flapped his transparent wings and flew out of one of the cross-shaped stars. At this time, Zhang Jie was singing praises, and as his wings flapped, a pleasant hymn sounded. Xiaohua had heard this hymn before, which was full of sorrow, sadness, disappointment, and helplessness. Moreover, the rhythm was getting lower and lower, and even the whole world was filled with despair. An angel of the holy light realm? Inkue couldn't imagine that there were 2-winged angels on the Dawn Rain continent. He couldn't help but exclaim, How is this possible? Then Inkue looked at the willow branch in Xiaohua's hand and understood. He shouted, "The saint artifact you mentioned, is it the saint artifact of the holy light realm?" Of course. Xiao Hua proudly held the willow branch and sneered, "If it's not the Holy Light Realm's Saint Artifact, which realm's Saint Artifact can it be?" "Fellow Taoist." Zhang Jie flew down, frowning. He looked at the black aura around Ing Kue with disgust, and then looked at Xiao Hua. It was rare for him to call Xiao Hua fellow Taoist, and he said, "Why did you call me here? Is this demonized book Immortal the key to breaking the array?" Of course, Ing Kue was confused, but Xiao Hua didn't explain. He pointed at Ing Kue and said, "Zhang Jie, this man is a demonized book Immortal from the Heavenly Court. He wants to sacrifice the Dawn Rain continent, where millions of humans live. What does this have to do with me?" Zhang Jie said unhappily, "Although I promised you, I will only help when you break the array. What does this book Immortal have to do with me? Don't you want to comprehend the mystery of the Permitha realm?" Xiao Hua waved the willow branch and said, "As long as you help me, I promise to let you comprehend the Permitha realm for 3 days." "Really?" When Zhang Jie heard this, his wings trembled, and countless praises sounded like war drums. Obviously, Zhang Jie was very excited. Damn it! Ing Kue was furious. Before Zhang Jie could make a decision, he waved his 4 arms, thrusting his sword, chopping his axe, and activating his golden seal. The bloody skull also spat out the red lotus karmic fire. Damn evil creature. Zhang Jie was furious when he saw the ghost cultivator's red lotus karmic fire. "How dare you use ghost arts in front of me?" As he spoke, Zhang Jie waved his crystal-like arm, passing through the light and landed in front of Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua understood Zhang Jie's intention. Without any hesitation, he waved his hand and handed the Permitha realm to Zhang Jie. Ha! Zhang Jie had just taken the Permitha realm when her 2 7-layered wings spread open again. Layers of holy flames leaped out of the void like the sun, and a huge impatience flower appeared in front of Xiao Hua. The petals of the impatience flower bloomed, and it was very dazzling. Zhang Jie's face was full of sincerity, and he was chanting in the holy language. As Zhang Jie waved the Permitha realm, the impatience flower bloomed completely, and the 10-colored brilliance covered Zhang Jie's body. At the same time, an overwhelming holy energy rushed out of the Permitha realm, and it rushed toward Ing Kue 10,000 times more ferocious than the heaven and earth overturning. Looking around as the 10-colored brilliance shone, the noble chi within 10,000 miles disappeared, and everything was filled with holy light. A kind of transparency, a kind of mercy, a kind of forgiveness, and an incomparable love came from the holy light. "Ha, Xiao Hua, you've been tricked." Facing the holy power of Permitha, Ing Kue was visibly moved, but he was also pleasantly surprised. As he laughed, he opened his mouth, and a stream of true energy with the outline of a petal fiercely fell into the void. Boom, boom, boom. Dozens of pillars of punishment once again rose from the left and right of Xiao Hua and Ing Kue, firmly enveloping them. The holy light of Permitha landed quietly on the pillars of punishment, and was unexpectedly dyed crimson by the light of the pillars of punishment. This. Xiao Hua looked down at his feet in disbelief. The blood-soaked pillars of punishment slowly flew out and covered the space around him. He stuttered as he looked at Ing Kue. He really didn't expect Ing Kue's target to be him. Ing Kue glanced at Zhang Jie and the mysterious Permitha realm, and a disdainful smile appeared on his face. He turned to Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "You didn't expect this, did you? You are my prey. I first set up a punishment array for you to break, then I set up a vast space. Finally, I dawdled with you for so long because I wanted you to fall into the real punishment array. Only this array can exchange your demigod bloodline for me." "How did you know?" Xiao Hua couldn't believe his ears. This was one of his biggest secrets. Except for Elder Wu of Hutu village, no one knew about it. Hee. Ing Kue raised his hand and pointed at the forehead of the bloody skeleton. The bloody skeleton opened its mouth, and an extremely dim bloody figure flew out from the skeleton's mouth. Wasn't it Xiao Hua's appearance? Damn it. I understand now. Xiao Hua cursed in a low voice. "You got the drop of blood that I lost in the sword catacomb." "Ah, that's right." Ing Kue laughed and clapped his hands. "If it wasn't for your blood, how could I have woken up today?" In my eyes, no human cultivator in the entire Xiaoyu continent is as precious as your drop of blood. I have planned for 1,000 years, and today I can finally get what I want. If I devour your blood, I won't be able to cultivate to the supreme pure heaven immortal realm. While he was speaking, half of the scroll hanging above Ing Su's head fell down, and the execution platform appeared with a rumble. 81 pillars of punishment firmly bound Xiao Hua's aura. Although the laws of heaven and earth were madly pouring down, the evil aura of heaven and earth above the execution platform suppressed everything and blocked the laws. Furthermore, each of the pillars of punishment once again produced 81 extremely thick chains of punishment, which covered the sky and covered the earth as they fell down, wanting to seal Xiao Hua. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Thank you to Benbin and Kai Gue Hun for their tips. Chapter 5208. Seeing the desperate situation, Xiao Hua's eyes were filled with determination. He looked at Ing Kue and said, "Don't think that you are the only one who is scheming. Don't you know that I am also waiting for an opportunity? What a coincidence! I fell into your trap, and now you are also in my jar." As he spoke, Xiao Hua's arms emitted bright silver immortal qi, and he made several hand seals, which fell into the void. Clang clang clang. In the void around Ing Kue, the ear-piercing sound of swords rang out, and sharp sword intent rushed out, sealing the space around Ing Kue. When Ing Kue heard Xiao Hua's words and saw Xiao Hua use the hand seals, he was shocked. He had already activated the eye-clearing technique, but he could not see anything except the sword light. As for the sword light, Ing Kue was relieved. He laughed wildly and said, "Ignorant child, don't you know that I, a Confucian cultivator, am also proficient in sword cultivation? What can you do to me with a flying sword?" Just as Ing Kue said this, the void under his feet shattered, and a light shadow of more than 10 feet flew out from it. The light shadow flickered slightly, and a soaring sword intent was produced. Moreover, when Ing Kue's gaze fell on the light shadow, an illusion appeared in front of him and pulled his gaze into it. Ing Kue was shocked. He cut off his gaze with his mind and withdrew it. It was at this moment that the light shadow covered 100 miles around him. "What kind of sword is this?" Ing Kue asked in surprise. This sword intent was naturally the immortal trapping sword diagram that Xiao Hua had placed in the void long ago. However, Xiao Hua's current strength was far from enough to activate the sword diagram. Even if he activated it now, the sword light that had just appeared was not enough to catch Ing Kue's eyes. However, the immortal trapping sword diagram was still the immortal trapping sword diagram, and Ing Kue's surprise was definitely not limited to this. Boom boom boom. As Ing Kue cut off his gaze, within the 100 miles of light shadow, a shabby sword diagram broke through the air, like a ferocious underwater beast roaring loudly. With the appearance of the sword diagram, a soaring murderous aura poured out, and layers of sword intent, like stormy waves, crazily rotated in the diagram, condensing into a fierce sword formation that wanted to escape from the sword diagram. As soon as the soaring murderous aura touched the punishment formation, it immediately tore the punishment chains into pieces. Even Ing Kue's huge body could not help but transform into a sword under the murderous aura. Clang! An earth-shaking sword cry rang out. Ing Kue's body shone with a golden light, and streaks of sword light rushed into the sky along with the murderous aura. As for the sword in his hand, it first let out a mournful cry, and its halo became extremely dim. After a while, it let out a long cry, and actually broke free from Ing Kue's control and rushed into the sword diagram. Psst. Ing Kue was dumbfounded. He looked at the sword diagram that had turned into a misty sword light. Within the sword light, a ferocious sword was faintly discernible. Although it had not yet revealed its sword form, the sword light was incomparably cold. The ferocious sword that had forced Xiao Hua to the point that he could not fight back just now had already disappeared into the sword diagram. Ing Kue could not help but cry out, could this be the for great sword diagrams? How could Xiao Hua answer him? Immortal spiritual energy was rapidly produced in Xiao Hua's hands. In the void above his head, the power of thunder tribulation was generated, and the laws of heaven and earth fell, trying to imprison Xiaohua. However, in the punishment formation, in the immortal trapping sword diagram, the laws of heaven and earth and the thunder tribulation could not fall. However, this space was not the same space, and Xiaohua was not the Xiaohua of the Jade Archive. Under the activation of the immortal art, he could only activate the immortal trapping sword diagram, but it was still beyond his power to kill Ing Kuei. Ing Kuei was scared out of his wits at first, but when he saw that the sword diagram had condensed into a sword form and could not break free, and the entire sword diagram was like a bound ferocious beast, he could not help but raise his head and laugh. I see. Although you have obtained the supreme treasure of the immortal realm, you are still a cultivator of the mortal realm. Even if you have a reincarnated body, you can't activate it. In that case, don't let me take advantage of you. Xiaohua. Outside the punishment formation, Zhang Jie had also noticed the crisis Xiaohua was in. She hurriedly urged, quickly tear this formation apart. I can only activate the Nirvana Paramitha once, but if the formation is obstructing me, I'm afraid I can't. Xiaohua naturally saw it. Zhang Jie was protected by the 10 colors of the Paramitha and had long turned into a phoenix immortal flower. However, the holy light was so redemptive and compassionate that it wouldn't forcefully tear apart the punishment formation. Furthermore, within the phoenix immortal flower, Zhang Jie's spirit body was tainted by the light of the Paramitha and actually showed signs of being unable to withstand it. Reverend Yun snorted coldly, holding the Panga axe in his dragon claw. Namo Mithriya. Namo Mithriya chanted the name of the Buddha, then raised his hand and produced the Tree of Seven Wonders. At this point in time, none of Ing Kuei's clones dared to delay any longer. Hee. Ing Kuei sneered and raised his hand. Swoosh. A huge golden hand that looked like it was made of gold grabbed out of thin air, trying to cover the sword diagram. Clang. Before the huge hand could land, a towering sword intent flew out from the sword chi and completely cut off Ing Kuei's huge golden hand. Ing Kuei could not help but burst into laughter again when he saw the power of the sword diagram. He did not try to control the sword diagram, but waved both hands and unleashed countless tiny beams onto the blood-red punishment platform. Although they were much weaker than the sword diagram, they carried a strong blood-red ferocious gleam and spread toward the left of the sword diagram. A cold smile emerged on Xiaohua's face when he saw Ing Kuei exercising the divine ability of Book Immortal, trying to seize the immortal trapping sword diagram by force. It was as if he could see the scene when he fought with Lung Qingge when his cultivation base was still weak. He raised his voice and said, as an emperor, if his heart is for the people, even if he is high up in the imperial court, he will still have the hearts of the people. As an emperor, if his heart is not for the people, even if he is the son of heaven, the hearts of the people will still punish him. Xiaohua had already said this before, and the meaning behind it was even more profound than what Xiaohua had said to Lung Qingge in the past. Xiao is the beginning. I am here to seize your freedom for 10,000 generations. Engraved in stone, recorded in the annals of history, how I rebuked you. See how this Xiao will suppress you. His anger was much less and the level was much higher. However, in the end, Xiaohua's voice rose again as he said angrily, if the hearts of the people are powerless, I will do it. If the hearts of the people desire, I will do it. If the hearts of the people are destroyed, I will replace them. After saying this, Xiaohua waved his hand and took out the Xinyuan sword from the space. He threw it into the immortal trapping sword diagram without hesitation. Boom! On the sword diagram, the half-formed ferocious sword immediately let out a rumbling sound as the Xinyuan sword was thrown in. The bronze sword light swept up endless profound mysteries and soared into the sky. The profound mysteries swept across the blood-red punishment platform like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves, sweeping them clean. Ing Kuei was shocked and astonished. He gritted his teeth and said, This is clearly the Xinyuan sword of my Confucian school. You are a Taoist cultivator. Where did you get the Xinyuan sword? Unfortunately, how could Xiaohua answer him? Moreover, although the Xinyuan sword was not the immortal trapping sword, It was also a famous ferocious sword in every world. What was special was that in the vast space of the book Immortal, the profound mysteries of the sword Qi soared into the sky. It was like a giant hand of heaven and earth had grabbed the space of tens of thousands of li, pulling all the majestic aura and law chains into the sword Qi. Woo! One by one, the stars fell into the sword Qi like falling stars. One by one, the mountains fell into the sword Qi like collapsing rivers. When the entire space shattered, the bronze Xianyuan sword appeared like a sword of heaven and earth. One side of the sword was divided into 5 sections, respectively engraved with the sun, moon, and stars. The other side was divided into 9 sections, respectively engraved with mountains, rivers, and plants. On the hilt of the sword, one side was engraved with the techniques of farming and animal husbandry, and the other side was engraved with the strategy of unifying the 4 seas. As the shadow flashed, the sun, moon, and stars lingered, the mountains, rivers, and plants danced. The unparalleled sharpness of the sword streaked across the space, setting off a roar like a wave. The roar of the wind tore everything apart. The 81 punishment pillars were slanted, and the blood-mottled punishment platform was overturned. Not to mention the hundreds of punishment chains that trapped Xiaohua, they had already shattered like a spider web. Ying Kuei's expression was blocked by the golden light and black gas, so Xiaohua couldn't see it. However, looking at Ying Kuei's trembling body and the broken crown, Xiaohua could already feel Ying Kuei's sorrow. Ying Kuei seemed to want to raise his hand to control the Xianyuan sword. Not to mention that he was an emperor and didn't dare to control it, he definitely didn't dare to block the power of the immortal trapping sword diagram. At this moment, Zhang Jie, who couldn't support the Nirvana sword anymore, suddenly chanted, "Saint Lord, lend me your power to wipe out the evil spirits in this world." As he spoke, Zhang Jie's wings emitted a bright holy light. The Nirvana sword waved, and a ray of holy light passed through the stormy space storm and landed on Ying Kuei. The Nirvana sword in Zhang Jie's hand was different from when it was in Xiaohua's hand. The holy light lacked redemption and had more anger. Even the immortal trapping sword diagram couldn't stop it. The holy light seemed to be gentle as it crashed into Ying Kuei's body. It didn't have the shocking power of the Xianyuan sword, but under the holy light, there was a soft swoosh. Like the law of heaven and earth, raindrops fell like tears. Under the raindrops, not only did the black gas that was destroyed by the golden light turn into nothingness, but even the golden light was annihilated. A mighty man wearing an emperor's robe and a crown was revealed in the annihilated golden light. The man's face was filled with incomparable shock. However, as soon as the holy light passed, the man's eyes turned red. He waved his 4 arms at the same time and said angrily, "Whoever dares to mess with my order, I will kill him." After that, the golden light scattered again. The sword, flute, bow, golden seal, and even the bloody skull were all summoned. They madly pounced on Zhang Jie, not caring that the Xianyuan sword was already close to him. As for Zhang Jie, after waving the Nirvana sword, the holy light around him was quickly annihilated. His spiritual body was also a little turbid, as if he couldn't withstand it. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Maitreya Buddha world honored one chanted the name of Buddha. The tree of 7 wonders fell down. Under the light of all kinds of treasures, the treasured swords, disciples, bows and arrows, and the golden seal all lost their colors. As the tree of 7 wonders brushed past, all the treasures fell, not to mention the blood-colored skull. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you to Benben, Kai Guanhuan, and other fellow Taoists for your tips. I will add more chapters for you today. Chapter 5209. Not only that, as the tree of 7 wonders waved, countless worlds were destroyed, and the Buddha's light went beyond space and fell on Ying Kuei's body. Bang! The sword light around Ying Kuei's body was annihilated as if it had hit a broken piece of cotton. The blood-red color in his eyes disappeared. However, what surprised Xiaohua was that even though the tree of 7 wonders had struck him, Ying Kuei's body was still unharmed. At this time, Ying Kuei's eyes were slightly closed, and his body was falling rapidly. "Watch me." Just when Xiaohua was hesitating whether to let Reverend Yun attack, an arrogant voice came from afar. Then he saw the celestial being flying over barefoot. Before he could get close, he opened his mouth. Buzz! A loud roar broke through the air, and the heavenly dipper rolled out of his body. Whoosh! An aura several times fiercer than the spirit-slaying light rushed out of the heavenly dipper, instantly drowning the surrounding space. Then, as the celestial being raised his hand and pointed, a black light of death came out of it. This black light passed through the broken space and covered Ing Kuei. At this time, the golden light around Ing Kuei began to regenerate, but the black light of death had already extinguished it. Fellow Taoist. Reverend Yun squinted at Xiaohua and said, "There is something wrong with the emperor's outfit. Even the Maitreya Buddha's tree of 7 wonders could not break it. My Pangu axe may not succeed." Speaking of this, Reverend Yun seemed to be unwilling to give up and explained, "Of course, it's not that I's Pangu axe is not sharp enough. It's just that in the mortal world, its power is limited. I'm afraid that it and the emperor's outfit are both under the same law of heaven and earth." In fact, there was no need for Reverend Yun to explain. The black light of death, which even the 2 great saints of the original realm were afraid of, had only extinguished the emperor's outfit and the golden light of Ing Kuei's immortal body. How could Xiaohua not know that he could not destroy the immortal body of the book Immortal on the Dawn Rain continent? In fact, even Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu could not be killed by the divine powers of the 3 continents if their immortal bodies were not damaged, let alone the book Immortal. Wasn't Fairy Xingyu the same? Although he had changed many bodies, the immortal mark was still there. As long as he had immortal qi, he could still recover his immortal spirit body. Sure enough, Zhang Jie carefully held the higan and said loudly, "Xiaohua, the immortal body of the heavenly quartz book Immortal has already surpassed the law of heaven and earth in the Dawn Rain continent, so it should be indestructible in the Dawn Rain continent. Although the higan has many wonderful methods, it can't surpass the law of heaven and earth here, so." "And I understand." Xiaohua nodded. Since Reverend Yun had already said that, there was no need for Zhang Jie to repeat it again. Xiaohua gave the Shenyuan sword in the immortal trapping sword diagram a look, then looked up at the sky. The punishment formation had been destroyed, and Ing Kuei's vast space had been pierced by the diagram, gradually collapsing. The thunder tribulation that was previously blocked by the formation was now coming out like a shadow, while the omnipresent laws of heaven and earth were coming at him. While the thunder tribulation was brewing, Xiaohua actually felt a pair of frightening eyes staring straight at him. "Everyone," Xiaohua ordered in his mind, "the immortal body of the heavenly quartz book Immortal is very powerful, and there is no other way to break it apart with the means of Confucian cultivators. The Shenyuan sword is the only weapon we have today, and only I can activate this supreme treasure of Confucian cultivators. So, I have no choice but to step forward. Now, the Shenyuan sword has borrowed the power of the immortal trapping sword diagram, and if I want to activate it, I will have to use the immortal energy. Perhaps, as soon as I destroy the immortal body of the book Immortal, the great tribulation of heaven and earth will descend. Therefore, I'll leave the task of breaking the formation and saving the billions of lives on the 3 continents to you." "Big brother," cried Shur the Archfiend, "since we can't kill the book Immortal, why should we? The lives on the Dawn Rain continent can't be compared to the 3 continents. Even if all of them are destroyed, it will only be 10% of the 3 continents. You should know which is more important. Besides, with Big Brother's vast space, we can also save the disciples of Fortune Gate, Thunder Controlling Sect, and other old friends of Big Brother." Xiaohua smiled faintly, then raised his hand and patted the top of his head. Boom! 3 streams of Xiantian true qi gushed out, and in an instant, the surrounding righteous qi crashed down on Xiaohua. Although Ing Kuei was washed away by the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper's black light, the blood-red color in his eyes slowly reappeared. He saw that Xiaohua had actually used the 5 Qis unifications technique, and his eyes looked towards the Shenyuan sword. He immediately understood Xiaohua's intention, and he hurriedly urged his body to escape from the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper. Unfortunately, how arrogant was the black light! Even if it couldn't cut off his 3 flowers and couldn't destroy his 5 cheese unifications technique, it could still wash away his immortal body until he couldn't move. Little brother Mo Ling. Xiaohua's body surged with sword light, and his whole body gradually turned into a sword. The sound of a sword chime rang out. Human lives are not worthless. Ordinary people are lives, and so are kings. Similarly, human lives are not important, they are all lives. Whether it's the Dawn Rain continent or the 3 continents, since I have seen it, I can't avoid it, and I can't have selfish thoughts. Although I have gone, the 3 continents still have you to save. After he finished speaking, the sound of a sword chime shook the heavens and the earth, and a sword light that penetrated the heavens and the earth rushed into the immortal trapping sword diagram. Just as the sword light entered, a huge dragon-like roar was heard from the sword diagram. Xiaohua was like a sword god, and his figure appeared under the Xinyuan sword. When Xiaohua raised his hand and grasped the Xinyuan sword, the space within tens of thousands of li began to be annihilated at an accelerated rate. However, when Xiaohua's eyes were like the sun and moon, and his arms were like mountains, and he slowly waved the Xinyuan sword, countless light shadows were born from the Xinyuan sword, and fell into the annihilated space. Boom boom boom. The noble qi within tens of thousands of li crazily gushed out and rushed into the light shadows. Many suns, moons, stars, mountains, rivers, plants, farmers, and generals were born. As the Xinyuan sword fell, the suns, moons, stars, mountains, rivers, plants, and so on all crashed into it like a flood. The place where the Xinyuan sword fell was naturally Ing Kuei's emperor's outfit. Although the emperor's outfit was suppressed by the black light of annihilation, and the golden light was no longer there, and only some mountains and rivers could be seen faintly flashing, but the imperial qi on it was strong and unparalleled in the world. The Xinyuan sword was heavy and had no edge, and with the power of the sword diagram, it stabbed into the emperor's outfit. The imperial qi was immediately shattered, and then the images of the suns, moons, and stars also poured in. However, in just a moment, Ing Kuei's eyes were filled with surprise. Bang! Like the mountains and rivers were broken, and the land fell down, the emperor's outfit turned into pieces and fell with the wind like butterflies dancing in the wind. At the same time, ka. Above the firmament, a burst of thick lightning appeared. This lightning was the tribulation of heaven and earth, and even the book Immortal of the heavenly court couldn't resist it. Xiaohua looked at the Xinyuan sword in his hand, and the fierce light on it didn't diminish. Waves of fierce qi that wanted to kill the book Immortal of the heavenly court unceasingly attacked Ing Kuei, but when this fierce qi fell into the book Immortal's tenacious golden light, it dimmed and disappeared. Fellow Taoist. At this time, the celestial being shouted, "Quick, I can't hold on any longer." But Xiaohua agreed and turned his head to look into the distance. At this time, more than 100 scattered nascent souls had already protected millions of cultivators and escaped from the vast space. Fairy Hongxia was naturally among them. Xiaohua didn't know if his reluctant gaze swept over Fairy Hongxia. He gritted his teeth and activated his immortal qi, preparing for the final attack. But when the immortal qi was produced and the thunder tribulation fell, Xiaohua suddenly saw the 5-colored true qi with black threads on top of Ing Kuei's head. Damn it! Xiaohua's mind lit up, thinking of the new princess actions when he was possessed by the devil. He cursed in a low voice and slapped his head again. Swish, swish, swish. 5 streams of true qi rushed out from the 4 half-sky hearts. It was very strange. When the 4 half-sky hearts appeared, the half-petal on top of Ing Kuei's head suddenly produced 5 petals. These 5 petals were also in the shape of the heavenly heart. Even the petals produced a strange suction force and sucked in the 4 half-sky hearts. Swish! A pure noble qi rushed out from the petals with a power that could wash away all impurities. It first spun in the scroll, then poured into the top of Book Immortal's head. Wisps of black smoke were forced out by the noble qi. However, the black smoke was like a maggot. Although it had transformed into tiny, bizarre fiends and fell in the air, they still rushed madly towards Ing Kuei's immortal body, as if they would not stop until one of them was dead. Ha! Sure, the fiend flew out while yelling, "Don't be afraid, fellow Taoist. This is my dish." The billowing fiend energy of Sure the fiend drowned these fiends in an instant. At this point, the celestial could no longer hold on. He retracted the heavenly dipper and nodded at Reverend Yun. Then, both man and dragon disappeared quietly. Seeing that the dark beam of silence was gone, a dazzling golden light shone out from the top of Ing Kuei's head once again, slowly covering his head and neck. Xiao Hua felt relieved when he saw that the golden light was not evil, and the immortal energy in his palms slowly dissipated. Just as Xiao Hua was about to heave a sigh of relief, a dignified and surprised voice came out from the golden light. "What is going on?" Then, a pair of arms suddenly reached out from the golden light, seeming to be trying to kill Sure the fiend and Xiao Hua. Not good. Xiao Hua's heart tightened again, and he hurriedly urged his immortal qi again. The Xianyuan sword? The voice came again from the golden light. Who are you? How dare you take the Xianyuan sword of a Confucian cultivator? Seeing that Ing Kuei's arms had stopped, Xiao Hua dared not let his guard down. He shouted, "Senior, I am Xiao Hua. The heavenly dipper in your body now belongs to me. Please think carefully." Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Just as Xiao Hua's voice faded away, Ing Kuei's angry voice was heard. After cursing 3 times in a row, he shouted again, What have I done? P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a tip, and Chapter 52:10. As he spoke, Ing Kuei raised his head again, as if he was about to do something. But just as he raised his arm, he dropped it again and said in a low voice, "So be it. If it weren't for these clones, how could I have come this far?" Xiao Hua understood that Reverend Yun, Celestial Being, and Feng Wu had joined hands to kill Ing Kuei's clones. Looking at Ing Kuei's increasingly powerful golden light, and sensing the mighty imperial power fighting against the sword energy of Xianyuan sword, Xiao Hua felt somewhat helpless. He no longer had the strength to activate the immortal trapping sword diagram. After pondering for a brief moment, Xiao Hua retreated at top speed, exercising the mystic technique of Qingqiu Mountain to forcibly suppress the immortal energy. However, even though he had used Su Ji's magical technique and the mystic technique of Qingqiu Mountain, the tribulation cloud above Xiao Hua's head still did not completely dissipate, and a suffocating pressure loomed over him. With the immortal energy gone, the fierceness of the immortal trapping sword diagram dropped rapidly. After half the time it took to finish a pot of tea, it still turned into a broken diagram and fell under Xiao Hua's feet. Holding the Xianyuan sword in his hand, Xiao Hua was on guard as he carefully put the diagram into his space. On the other side of Ing Kuei, Zhang Jie was also staring at Ing Kuei, fearing that Ing Kuei would suddenly attack him. Similarly, Buddha Mithriya, World Sovereign Xiao Hua, and Zhang Jie stood in a tripartite confrontation, trapping Ing Kuei in the middle. Unfortunately, Ing Kuei just stood there, letting Tianxin cleanse his immortal body, letting the dazzling golden light once again envelop the area of 1,000 miles, and letting Demon Lord transform into a fiend cloud and swim around him, trying to devour him. It was as if he did not notice any of this, as if he was reminiscing, in the time it took to finish a meal. Reverend Yun, Feng Wu, Huang Tong, Taoist sorcerer, Reverend Yun, and Celestial Being had returned to different parts of the space. At this moment, Xiao Hua breathed out a long sigh of relief. He wiped the cold sweat off his forehead with his hand, quietly looking at the golden light in front of him, and the pure white light of Tianxin falling under Ing Kuei's feet. Ha! Demon Lord burst into laughter, plunging straight into the ground and vanishing in a moment. When Demon Lord Sure flew out, Ing Kuei had just gotten out, and he didn't notice it in a hurry. Now that he was awake, how could Demon Lord Sure dare to enter the space in front of him? The Demon Lord had left, and his incarnations had returned. However, the Heavenly Quartz Book Immortal Ing Kuei did not move or speak. At this moment, the vast space of tens of thousands of miles had disappeared, but the remaining aura was still there. Strong winds howled in the sky. The red clouds swayed, and the blood-red sun hung in the sky. One day had passed. On the ground, The snowfield was gone, the mountain peaks were gone, the sword tomb and the sky-patrolling city were gone. Thick cracks spread out in all directions like wounds on the ground. It was a ghastly sight. Sigh. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the golden light. The voice was dignified, but it was also filled with regret. Xiaohua opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but when the words reached his mouth, he didn't know what to say. Yin Kuei was not Su Ji, so Xiaohua did not dare to approach him. What's the use of regretting now? Zhang Jie's cold voice rang out. You humans, whether human or immortal, have this problem. You have no faith in your heart. For the so-called purpose, you do things that challenge your bottom line. When there is no bottom line, you will naturally become a demon. The so-called demon is sometimes the power of the demon world, and sometimes it is the desire in your heart. Yin Kuei's voice rang out. Even if I regret now, what can I do? Atonement. This time, Xiaohua didn't hesitate and continued, only by redeeming your crimes and sins can you have no regrets. Such a sin, when can I atone? Yin Kuei said faintly, as if he was talking to himself. Xiaohua answered indifferently, if you don't take a few steps, you won't reach 1,000 miles. If you don't atone, when can you atone? That's right. Yin Kuei thought for a while and nodded. Then, with a boom sound, golden light shone from his body. Xiaohua and Zhang Jie were shocked, but they saw Yin Kuei's huge golden body kneel down in midair. His voice sounded like a temple collapsing. I am ashamed to face heaven and earth, and I am willing to atone for my sins from today onwards. I am willing to atone for my life with the merit of a lifetime. If I don't atone for my sins, I won't ascend to heaven. Crack, crack, crack. The 9-colored thunderbolt fell into Yin Kuei's golden light like a rainbow. When the lightning disappeared, Yin Kuei turned his hand and touched the half-petal above his head. Crack. The petal cracked, and the book broke, turning into profound meaning and falling into the calyx below. The light of the calyx gradually faded, and the heart of heaven returned to 4.5 pieces. Seeing this, how could Xiaohua not know what Yin Kuei was doing? His heart was bleeding and he couldn't help but roar in his heart, Big brother, I asked you to atone for your sins because I want you to help me save the world and break the immortal formation with the power of a book Immortal. You? Why are you hurting yourself? What you're doing is destroying the hope I just had. Oh my God, aren't you toying with me? The heart of heaven fell from Yin Kuei's head like a falling flower. With every inch it fell, the golden light around Yin Kuei's body converged into the heart of heaven. When the heart of heaven fell under Yin Kuei's feet, a tall king stood in front of Xiaohua and the others. Xiaohua! Yin Kuei seemed to have remembered everything. He raised his hand and pointed at the heart of heaven. The heart of heaven flew to Xiaohua and said, This is your heart of heaven. I return it to you intact. If it weren't for you today, I would have been consigned to eternal damnation. I won't say thank you. Everything in the heart of heaven is my gratitude. Xiaohua was speechless, but what could he say? When he took the heaven's heart, he saw that the incomplete heaven's heart had been mended a lot, becoming denser and denser. The other 4 heaven's hearts had also become denser, far more profound than his previous heaven's heart. It was as if the other 4 heaven's hearts had been added to it. Xiaohua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. How could he not know that Yin Kuei's origin was not ordinary? If he hadn't hurt himself to atone for his sins, he would have had a higher chance of breaking the immortal formation. However, it was too late to say anything now. Xiaohua patted his head, and the 5 qis rushed out, taking the heart of heaven. He looked at Yin Kuei and wanted to say something, but at this moment, Yin Kuei rapidly aged and turned into a withered old man. Oh, and this? Yin Kuei thought of something and hurriedly raised his hand. The human-shaped shadow that looked very similar to Xiaohua flew out of his hand and entered Xiaohua's body. Then, Yin Kuei said embarrassedly, I took your blood essence, but instead of returning it, I wanted to take your life. I'm really sorry. Xiaohua was not used to Yin Kuei's behavior. He hurriedly replied, Senior, you're too polite. Seeing that Yin Kuei didn't mention the heart of heaven, Xiaohua looked at Zhang Jie and didn't say anything. Good. Zhang Jie clapped his hands and said, You reined in the horse at the edge of the cliff and turned over a new leaf. You're indeed a hero. I'm really surprised to be praised by the angel of the Holy Light Realm. Ing Kuei glanced at Zhang Jie, and his gaze fell on the permitha in her hand. However, I don't want you to follow in my footsteps. With your ability, even in the Daybreak continent, you also have the strength to fight with us. However, you relied too much on this sacred artifact, so you could only take one move from me. What's more, when you forcefully activated it, you've already suffered a backlash. Zhang Jie also sighed. She returned the permitha to Xiaohua and said, Book Immortal is right. What belongs to the Sacred Master should be returned to the Sacred Master, and what belongs to the Nanwu Great Compassionate Pessimist should be returned to the Nanwu Great Compassionate Pessimist. I'm just a little angel, so you don't have to worry about me. Nanwu Great Compassionate Pessimist? Ing Kuei didn't understand, but he didn't ask. Xiaohua kept the permitha. Zhang Jie flapped his wings and said, I'm leaving. I just activated the permitha, and my spiritual body is already on the verge of collapse. Don't call me for 100 days. After 100 days, when you break the formation, I can still come again. Since you can recover in 100 days, why don't you come directly to me? You used the sacred artifact to activate it, and I'm also using the same amount of sacred energy. Don't make me go through any more trouble, Xiaohua said with a bitter smile. Zhang Jie nodded. Then I'll do as you say. Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands. I'll see you off. I hope you can recover soon. Zhang Jie wasn't one to be courteous. He nodded and flapped his wings, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Break the formation? Ing Kuei looked at Xiaohua, then at the Thunderbolt Immortal and the others. He asked curiously, break what formation? The Thunderbolt Immortal rolled his eyes at Ing Kuei and answered, of course it's the immortal formation of the 4 great continents. The 4 great continents? Ing Kuei was even more confused. Forget it. Xiaohua looked at Ing Kuei's abnormally withered arms and other parts. He really wanted to shout at him, why didn't you ask earlier? But now he could only sigh and say, let's not talk about this first. Senior, how long can you stay in the Dawn Rain continent without your immortal body? It could be a few days or it could be a few years. Ing Kuei's face was filled with melancholy. If he hadn't forcibly cultivated the clone technique and actually turned into a demon with the body of a book immortal, he would definitely still be free and unfettered in the heavenly court. Actually, Xiaohua thought for a moment, then comforted him, Senior, you can think about it from another perspective. Although turning into a demon is a calamity, it might also be an opportunity. Since Ing Kuei was a book immortal of the heavenly court, he knew what Xiaohua was talking about. He nodded and said no more. After taking off his immortal body, Ing Kuei's overall strength had been greatly reduced, and he was no longer Xiaohua's match. Xiaohua looked at the vigilant clones and said with a smile, Fellow Taoists, you've all worked hard. Why don't you take a rest first? No need. Reverend Yun looked up at the sky and said worriedly, we don't have much time left. Let's find a way to break the formation first. Just wait. Thunderbolt Immortal stepped out from the crowd and said to Xiaohua, Fellow Taoist, please send me back to Kunlun Immortal Realm. I still need to refine my magical item. Alright. Xiaohua knew the refining of the 5 elements heavenly staff had come to the most critical moment. Without further ado, he took out the Kunlun mirror and sent Thunderbolt Immortal into his space. P.S. For all the fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Thank you to the leaders of Kai Gui Han and Chuan Tong for their tips.